to be here, but thank you for coming. Appreciate that very much. Besides a warm welcome, let me start by saying, for the record, it appears that all 5 council members are present. And having said that, then I would also like to acknowledge and welcome our returning for the second year, our facilitator, Jen Kavanaugh, former mayor of Piedmont. And then I would be remiss if I don't also acknowledge our staff here and would like to thank everyone for being here. We have Sarah Tracy, we have Chief Aker, we have Rebecca Barr, Mike Berger, Jennifer Gates, Dave Jans, and the man that makes me look thinner, our tech guy, Robert. Oh, anyway, so thank you for coming. And lastly, I do have to include the man that is our shepherd, our city manager, David Ewan. So I'm excited this morning or this afternoon, and I look forward to the opportunities that will present themselves in 2026. I value the composition of our current council and our ability to work together. Our charge this afternoon is to listen to the public, have thoughtful deliberation, and from there, establish the goals and priorities for 2026. Undoubtedly, consideration will be given to the continuation of the goals of 2025 where supported. During my formative months of serving on the council, I came up with an overarching goal of don't muck up our town. I was quickly corrected by our city manager that that was not a goal, but an aspiration. I reluctantly accepted the correction. However, I encourage all of us as we go forward today that we remain mindful of this aspiration. And with that, I will turn it over to our facilitator, Jan.
Thank you.
Taxation and climate mitigation adaptation. And within those various goals, we had some initial efforts that we'll go into more detail when we start talking about 2026, identified specific things that we wanted to accomplish around streamlining processes on housing, how do we protect and build more affordable housing than we have, look at regional partnerships and policy advocacy to bring funding into our area, and then also addressing our homeless response and making sure that we're taking a regional approach to that, both on an ongoing basis, but on an emergency basis as well. So a lot of accomplishments and movement on that over this past year. On the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services side, that was one that was a pretty lofty goal back, but has taken a couple years to come to fruition, which meant getting a ballot measure passed, identifying the funding, creating a Parks and Rec department, and getting that started. So that's something that we're really proud of doing this past year. Pedestrian safety, accessibility, and active transportation. A lot of work there having to do with identifying bike boulevards, creating new bike boulevards, doing safety improvements around the plaza, around the community, finding new ways to get information from the public to make sure that we're addressing the areas that are in most need for the community. Trees has been a big topic as well this past year. Urban forestry and the tree canopy, a study that was done identified every tree in the community. That's going to be coming to the city council in more detail here in the next month, I believe. Stewarding our parks and the plaza and our capital projects in our parks and plaza. We're embarking on that now. We did a complete survey of the plaza. So we know exactly what's in the plaza, elevations, everything. So that's a good launching point for future projects and future improvements that we want to get done there. Cemeteries has been a big priority for us over the past 3 years. I've been here working on turning those around, making sure that they're viable, but also an asset for the community, that we have the capacity, we have a place for people to come if they want to stay here in Sonoma, but then also generate the revenue to make them self-sustainable. So that's made some headway on that as well. And again, the detail is in here in the packet. And then supporting our nonprofit groups and community services and community programs. That's important. about $70,000, I believe, this past year went to different nonprofit community groups, not just in the city, but valley-wide, because all those community groups really help make us successful as a community, and it's important that we're part of those solutions. And then arts and programs and partnerships, that's been a big one too. Our art commission was really busy this year developing policies, finding ways to get art into our community in a more creative ways. Economic development and financial stability, obviously, this is key. So making sure that we are managing our funding correctly. We did a lot on that side to be more transparent. Everything is now online. Anybody can go online and look at our budget anytime, 24/7, and you'll get what the budget is as of the last hour. So everything's available. That's something new. I think that a lot of cities are trying to do, to just be as transparent as possible. We did get the support from our voters and our community to pass an initiative, funding initiatives, which really helped shore up our finances to allow us to have some breathing room, essentially, to have some of these conversations about areas we want to improve, such as Parks and Rec. Working with our chamber, who is our partner in our economic development side on local businesses support, identifying ways to support them, local businesses and new businesses on permitting, making sure that they have what they need, hearing the issues early so we can work on figuring out how to address those, like sidewalk seating and signage and other things. And I think that's been a big change and something that we welcomed, and I appreciate the chamber helping make that happen as well. And then look at the plaza and the plaza corridor planning. That's something that we're continuing looking at. Sonoma Valley unification annexation. This goal was focused more heavily focused more on coordination and collaboration with the county, specifically in the Springs and in the Valley, and how we work together. Homelessness is a great example of that we obviously work with the county Valley-wide to fund program services and staffing throughout the Valley to provide that homeless support. It is a regional effort, and it's been a very successful this past year, especially with two of our nonprofits getting new energy into them, new leadership that is allowing us to do a lot more for our community. And also looking at emergency preparedness, our emergency shelter, and how we coordinate with the county when we activate these shelters, and being more coordinated in that effort rather than having two separate things going on just because there's a city line. I think that was not the most efficient way to do things in the past. And then one of the things that we have been exploring, and this was brought up last year, we brought an item to council last year, was a Valley-wide infrastructure financing district. This is essentially redevelopment 2.0, as some people call it, but it's something that we're looking at to determine, is it financially viable for the city to participate in a Valley-wide enhanced infrastructure financing district. And that's something that is still underway. The consultant working for the county is working on that, and we'll be bringing that back to council for evaluation at some point. And then on the climate mitigation adaptation side of things, a lot of stuff has been happening there with our climate commission, moving initiatives forward, working on EV charging, working on policies, a lot of stuff behind the scenes to encourage and allow and make things more permissive for adopting EV and other climate initiative activities. Working with our fire districts on fire mitigation, and then also doing some of the heavy lift on the fire flood hazard mitigation plans that we're working countywide on. So a lot of work there to try to set us up moving into the future. And as part of this as well, we're going to be planting some more trees this year. I know for sure, now that we have a Parks and Rec department board. So those are some of the goals and kind of some of the efforts we've been doing. I do want to touch on the what's coming up this year and some of the challenges. Obviously, finances. We have a slight surplus in our projected budget, but it is tenuous, and that could be shifted based on a number of things. Cost increases keep going up, and how we're working with our partners. We're still weighing the impacts of HR 1 and the federal budget, and what that's going to happen coming down through the state to the county to us, and all the services that might be affected, both from the Medicare side to healthcare to housing to homeless services. All those are at stake, and some pretty big impacts that we're hearing about. So we're watching those very closely. Not that the city will be able to backfill a lot of those missing things, but there will be impacts of those that the city will have to address. And so making sure that we have a healthy reserve and we have capacity to be flexible and nimble as those new issues come up, I think is really important, a challenge that we're going to be addressing as we move forward. So I think with that, I think I'm gonna probably leave on the kind of looking forward on the uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty. I just don't want that to be left off the table. We have control a lot what's going to happen here within the city, but we definitely are impacted by what's going to happen at the county, state, and federal level. And I just don't want to lose sight of that as we go through this process today. So, no, I think that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I had an opportunity to speak with your staff leadership team, which I think are critical partners for you in the work that you get done. So this council today will be coming together and restating and reimagining what your priorities are, which is one of the most important things you do. And then you'll turn it over to your staff to execute throughout the year. I do think they provide such a valuable input to this process. So when I had a chance to talk to them, we were talking about what we were celebrating from 2025 as well as what we learned from that, what opportunities they see as they look ahead to 2026, and then any other issues or concerns that they wanted to flag that maybe just aren't on your radar. So that was how we structured our time together. And what you'll see here is not unlike what David just said, of course, is, staff is stretched very thin. So what we have up here is a whole group of folks working really diligently, but you do have a bit of a capacity crisis, which is very common in small cities because every state mandate, everything that comes down hits small cities just as hard as big cities. So they just don't usually have the depth of a bench to be able to lean into those projects. So much of what happens in terms of day-to-day operations is landing on the desks or the offices of very few number of people, and transitions and turnover are real. It happens all the time. You're not alone in that, but it does create a bit of a challenge because it's hard to keep water moving through the pipes, if you will, metaphorically, when you have a revolving door of people in seats. So the backlog that many people experience, which is we've been talking about this project for a long time, can create this desire to want to say yes to things when in fact we don't have additional capacity. So that's just sort of a push and pull that they experience at times. The financial reality check is real. So appreciate voters supporting the recent ballot measure. And yet it doesn't change the fact that as you're experiencing the financial crisis that we're seeing really throughout the country, if nothing else, if it does not materialize, it still creates a lot of uncertainty, which makes it really difficult to move forward. And so much of what your staff needs to do their work is often comes from needing additional resources. There is sort of an urge to prioritize, and what came up was sort of this desire to finish what we started. Many of the things, again, not unlike every other city, many of the things that you're focused on are multi-year in nature. We happen to come together at this time, but there's nothing special about this time. So it's not as if everything got finished in December and we're ready to start anew. But much of what we're trying to achieve with a very small staff is going to likely take place over a long time. So that just creates a challenge when we're wanting to do new and do more, is at some point we need to finish what we started, and that was their request. There's also real infrastructure gaps. I mean, we're sitting in this beautiful old building, which is well north of 100 years old. It's a great example of the type of infrastructure that you see in a lot of old, beautiful historic cities. There's also, an ERP system that's outdated. You have facility issues across the city that need to be addressed, as well as your fleet, which is literally out on the streets every day. So those are, it's not about complaining. It's just about the reality of what's there. The upside, I have to say, is that the staff is incredibly motivated to support you. It was really lovely to see how much they cared and respected each other, and we're really excited to have a full staff, including the most recent position that was added this last year, which is really going to be a boon to the leadership of your staff. So that was amazing. Next slide, please. One of the things that I love is I asked them to sort of visualize, and I have these cards on the table for the council as well, to sort of put a pin in, but bring it to life. And in doing so, what I loved is that you can really kind of see, they do say a picture tells 1,000 words, but what you might see in some of these photos was, here, while it looks a little bit crazy, what was amazing is this upper corner photo speaks to the complexity of what happens in delivering city services. And hopefully it comes across very flawlessly and seamlessly to residents, but this is often what it looks like behind the scenes, which just spoke to the fact that we need to not have distractions and ideally focus as we're moving through something like that. There was also this thought here, which is that, this wagon wheel still rolls despite having a few broken spokes. It still moves. And so there's this recognition that we need to keep things moving forward. And so let's not discount what is working, but we do need to move forward and continue to fix things. And, as they say, build the plane while you're flying it. That's often what's happening. Really love this idea here of thinking about, with this council, getting clarity so that we get all the boats moving in the same direction is what they were really hoping for there. And there was a thought here about thinking about how planning and resources will enable them to provide the services. So it's not perfect. There is a lot of uncertainty, and they're okay with that. But they really are looking for this group to help and recognize the importance of planning and putting the right resources against the initiatives that we're taking on. And then lastly, I'll end with this one here, which was one of my favorites, which is thinking about the mindset, which is that we are continuing to build a strong foundation, and at the same time, make sure all the voices in the community are part of that and that they're brought together with kindness, which to me felt like that was a really beautiful message from your staff that they wanted to leave with you. So that's what came from my conversations with staff. And with that, all right, we're going to move into what I teed up earlier, which is a thought for you all about your legacy. So I love this. This quote has been brought together in a variety of different ways, and there's actually a lot of thought. I reworded this quote, so now they're actually my words. But it's the thought here is: a community grows great when its leaders plant trees in whose shade they shall never sit. So obviously it speaks to the longevity of the work that you're doing. It speaks to that multi-year, if not multi-generational focus, which is, it speaks to the effort that's sometimes required, but also the benefits that will live on, potentially for your children and grandchildren, potentially for the benefit of folks who may not even live here right now. So it's really thinking about what is the legacy that you would want to leave. So I want to open this up to our council before we move into public comment. And I invite you to just think about it. I do have a page in front of you that has this saying on it. You have a reflection page there. I invite you to just take a minute or two and think about, from your perspective, when you think about your service on this council, what lasting impact do you hope to have on Sonoma? I invite anyone from the audience to play along if you'd like to. And the trees here, I mean, obviously you are looking to plant a lot of trees, but of course the trees here are really a metaphor, which is like, what is the impact? Trees take a long time to grow. We can plant flowers tomorrow. Trees take a really long time. So what are those trees that you're looking to plant for future generations? What do you want those future generations to look back on this council and thank you for? And what do you want future councils who are going to be in your seats trying to make decisions, thinking about the care that you took of the city, what do you want them to thank you for as well? So I'll give you a moment. You have a piece of paper anywhere you want if you want to just ponder those questions or maybe take a few notes. And then if you're okay, Mr. Mayor, I'd love to just kind of turn it over to you all to share, 1 or 2 minutes about your thoughts on that question. And I'll pause there.
I'll be more than happy to. And
Before you do that, can I just give everyone just like 2 minutes to put their thoughts on paper?
I can do that.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So take 2 minutes. I'll set a little timer. So we may finish before 1.
Mm-hmm.
We could stretch this conversation out, or we could take a little break for public comment and just find it, come back at 1.
Yeah, I think those you're gonna have to say was kind of how we use it. I think you did it. I kind of skipped to that. I mean,
Oh, yes, yes, yeah. Your
because
talking points.
like it was back on the first page, right? Challenging. I try to do the context for the year ahead. Like I think, like how we use it. That's what you do. Like,
So you're looking at, you can do that now, or you can do that. You could do that later. But if you want it, that is.
well, maybe before they start the deliberation,
Yeah,
we just remind that.
that. Yeah. So I have the talking points. I can pull that up if you want to reference those. But you may know that. Let me pull that up.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, sir. There's still people writing, so this might be good to put into notes if you want to do that. I think all that would help.
It's right here.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, yeah. So when you live in I kind of miss it's not different.
We can do that, or you can do it before you sit down the food. Which do you prefer?
Maybe that's before it's asked.
So after public comment, it's like we'll bring it back to you, and then we'll go into commission for the conversation. Okay? This is for everyone. Yeah. Mr. May, how are you doing on time? I'm still seeing a few 10 moving. Take your time. Maybe 30 more seconds or so to wrap it up. Okay, great. From a few hands. How are we doing for time? You good? Okay, good. All right, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it to you. I'm happy to give you the floor, or we can just go around however you all would like. So what I would love to do is hear from each of you. Thank you. My music's not in the background anymore. It's still playing. So would love to give each of you the floor for a minute or two to share, why this work matters when you have future generations, future councils look back on this particular body, not any one person in particular, but like that was the era of, that was the group of folks who did whatever. What's the legacy of this council going to be?
So one of the benefits of being mayor, you don't have to go first. So I will ask for either a volunteer or I will dictatorially appoint. Thank you.
All right, let's go over here. So we'll give it a minute or two, and at some point, I'll give you a little watch.
Oh, this will be quick. I have that effect on Mark. Hello? How's this? Is that good? Yeah, there we go. Okay. So what I wrote is my goal would be that we are creating the foundation for all members of our community to be safe, free of fear, because that is the meaning of real democracy, prepared for extreme events, create fertile ground for opportunity for financial stability, creative thinking, building trust in local community leadership, and nurturing the ability to embrace change.
Oh, I love it. Okay. Can I just ask you, it sounded like you had it all. Can I ask you to just read it one more time? I'd love to capture something for you.
Okay, so we are creating the foundation for all members of our community to be safe, free of fear, because that's the true meaning of democracy, prepared for extreme events, create fertile ground for opportunities for financial stability, creative thinking, build trust in local community leadership, and the ability and nurture the ability to embrace change.
Okay, that was amazing. It was a mouthful. I tried to capture a lot of the preparedness.
Prepare for extreme events.
Thank you. Okay, let me know how I captured this here, if that kind of captures the sentiment you were going for.
Yeah, it's extreme events or black swans, whatever you want to call them. Or black swans. We have too many of them these days.
So a lot of really great words. I love the all member part. I'll just flag that, which is, I love the inclusivity of that. Amazing. Okay, great. What else?
Yes, my turn. I appreciate your quotation, and also I have the similar quotation. That means, and what are we enjoying right now under the shade? The tree was planted by our ancestor. They never enjoy. So basically, Sonoma is kind of very special, and our 4 people already and the beauty visitor come, starting from the January label. And each generation, all these kind of the legacy and carried over generation by generation. So that is the island of Sonoma. So what is important thing for us is whatever you have been living here for generations, all of the new we should understand our great assets. We are gifted. We should preserve it and maintain it and establish over the goal. That is our and the goal. Another thing that politically is the those kind of the infrastructures and the buildings, and we should compute and protect it, and also protect our residents, provide a harmonious environment for them to work and live in here. And they always, when the fear is kind of applied and to live in the snow. And usually we talk a lot of the thing about the safety and the kids' education. Yes, that is also important. But what we need to keep more is an art or culture that is our previous mayor already make an emphasis on that. We should retreat. I think that is all. Thank you.
Nice. So this is a little bit over your shoulder. If you can sort of read my writing, does this feel like I captured the thoughts that you wanted to share? Let me know if there's something you felt like I.
That is right. Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. So I can hear some common themes here. Okay. All right. Who's next?
With the mayor's permission, I'll be happy to go next.
Let me think about, okay.
So 2026 is the year of. Oh, we're gonna do that later. Oh, wow, we're up on later.
Wrap it up, so you're gonna have a meeting.
Um, all right, so then the legacy that we talked about 3 years ago, when we first elected the three of us, a lot of that legacy evolves around the plaza. And I think what's important and what I would like to leave as legacy is a community that experiences sustainability in all fashions, whether it's transportation, whether it's parks. And Plaza certainly is the jewel of Sonoma, deserves appropriate attention. And I know that we've got a lot of things working in that direction currently. And then to create the opportunity for the community to grow and accept change and to ensure the safety of the community. And that involves weather issues, it involves fire, obviously, crime. But a place where people have the perception of safety, as well as not, it's actual safety. When you plant trees, you gotta water them.
What's watering mean?
Watering means partnership with the community, listening, accepting change. And to encourage civic participation.
Great. How do I capture that mean?
It's good.
Does it do that? All right. Okay, how about this one then?
Okay, I did something different. I looked at the reverse of the statement. So if you think about it in reverse, a community will decline when its leaders plant trees in order to see the shade. In other words, if you want instant gratification, if you go into this work because you want to see something happen while you're there and for yourself, then you're going to have a community in decline. So I'd like to just kind of look at it that way and then say that I think the legacy of at least this group has been that we really focus on the future all the time. We're doing a plan for the future, and that we continue to plan for the future, and that we don't plan for, I want to see that now. I want to, and push those kind of personal initiatives. So I think it's more about how we govern than the specifics of the trees. That's my thoughts.
Okay, how did I capture this? You know what I think?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Very good. So I have 3 thoughts. And I stated one last night, and it really is, I'd like a legacy that we protect the quality of our community that we so greatly value and cherish while facilitating the realistic and required change. My second legacy I'd like us to leave is that although the socioeconomic profile of our town has changed over the last 30 years, I'd like to, I hope that it will remain a welcoming community to all who visit and live here. And lastly, trees. You can't plant enough. And I will be selfish. I want to see them at least grow and stay alive. Ultimately, becoming heritage trees is great. So, thank you.
Can I ask, your first point, the first top of it, so we want to protect the quality of the community.
That we value greatly while facilitating the realistic and required change.
Thank you.
So the trees were the metaphor. The original inspiration for the quote is not mine, and it didn't hurt in this town cares about trees. All right. So now that you all look at these, anything you feel like maybe something that sparked, someone else said something that sparked something in you, anything you want to emphasize that you maybe heard that you didn't say that you want to uplift? Open for it.
So I think safety came across, and I think also it came across in the way of the broad sense of what safety means and being safe from many different things. And I do really appreciate kind of what seemed to be brought by everyone is that idea of that we are trying to think of the future, that we're trying to build a style of governing that hopefully as we pass on, different members of us are no longer on this council, but creates that culture that then new people fit right into that culture. So I think that there's definitely that came across, even though it wasn't said. I think that definitely came across of trying to create that culture of so the public and the community feels that they are that they have leadership, they have strong leadership, both in City Hall and city elected officials.
Anything else that you wanted to pin in, something you wanted to emphasize?
Yeah, I'm the thinking.
The microphone. Oh.
The
All the leaders, and one of the job duty is how to balance long term and the short term. I like the plant the tree. I can see it growing, and also it's kind of our achievements for our current and city council. But never minimize its the impact for the future. So sometimes we may sacrifice a lot of things we haven't enjoyed, but the older and the younger generation to come, they will enjoy because we did the same thing. And from what we have already, because they never know. For example, on the Broadway, so in the broad at the beginning, and people don't like it. You're gonna say, why? Small town is so big. And then the Vallejo and his brother-in-law insisted, should be this kind of life. And we enjoyed. So sometimes we need always thinking, keeping in our mind, maybe we do something. It's not for current, for the future.
Anything else that's coming up? So games or something that you feel like you wanted to take?
I just want to clarify that I was speaking both metaphorically about trees, but also in reality trees. Thank you.
Which is why
It's very clear.
great.
And when did it post?
Can we buy them already frozen?
it was more fertile.
Love it. Okay, great. Thank you for that. All right, so with that, so here we are right now. This is meant to lay the groundwork for the work we're gonna do this afternoon, which is taking what we have from our 2025 and think about how to build that. So in the spirit of building the legacy, the question is what's gonna happen in 2026 that's gonna continue to move the ball down the field, that's gonna continue, thank you.
What is going to help us to continue that work in 2026? So if we're going to take one step towards that 30 or 50-year legacy, what's the step we're going to take this year? So with that, I'm going to pause here and we invite members of the public. Again, we're so grateful to you for making the time, for coming out from your busy days. We know you all have families and lives and jobs to get back to, and we appreciate you making the time today and every council meeting you come to, every letter and every email. As a former mayor, I can assure you they all get read, and we appreciate you especially making the time to come in person. It really makes a difference. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our mayor, who will facilitate our public comment.
Thank you.
And actually, Ron, I'm just doing a quick time check. I know we told the public we'd start at 1. We're a little bit before 1. I want to pause here to see if any council members want to use this to take a short bio break to refill your water or use the restroom. Otherwise, if you're okay starting a smidge early, we can start now.
I'm okay with smidges.
Okay, great.
Because this is a little bit unusual in the sense that it's not like a traditional council meeting, there is no time clock because we do want to hear from you, but also be respectful that that we do want to hopefully capture what you have to say within that allotted hour. So with that, I welcome you to the dais. I would love to hear your name and address if you feel so inclined. If you want to remain anonymous, that's okay too. But please share your thoughts.
Is that on? Yeah. Great. Cool. Hi, Mark Bodenhammer, Sonoma Valley Chamber of Commerce. And first of all, since we're doing tree metaphors, I just want to make sure that we all remember the great 2018 ginkgo tree fiasco here in town. So plant trees, yes, but make sure the trees you plant don't produce a fruit that stinks later. Otherwise, great analogy. I do want to start off today just by commending our council and staff. I love these sessions. I think that it's something that has been a really helpful addition to our process. It's not something I remember us doing 5 or 6 years ago. It's kind of, I think, developed somewhat organically, but it's really a great thing for our community to participate in this and be a part of it. And also just want to recognize both the council and the staff. Your calm, sensible leadership really makes a big difference in our community. Again, going back in time, we had a period where there was a lot of transition on our city council. There was a ton of transition on city staff. I think we had like 6 city managers in a 2-year period before David got here. And it makes a huge difference for our businesses. They feel it. It allows them the ability to plan, knowing that there's stable leadership with the people up here and the people behind me. The service from our staff is always very friendly and responsive, proactive. You guys have come to our industry cluster meetings, and the response I hear from the business community, that just means a lot. Just A, knowing that you care, but B, facilitating those, hey, we're doing this process online now. It makes a huge difference. So thank you very much for those changes. In terms of looking for goals for next year, housing does remain our number one thing. It is very difficult for businesses to find people and the right people. And I want to remind you that it's not just the capital A-H affordable housing, but it's all levels of housing that are needed here. We don't need any more mansions on hilltops, but we do need places for doctors to live and managers and people, families, not only just so that we have the inventory here, but also we want to make sure that people who are in affordable housing units now have a place to graduate up to when they have a family and grow and earn more. We don't want to have just small apartments apartments and then huge houses. We do need that middle chunk of housing as well. In terms of local economy, we are in kind of big transitions right now. It's pretty well documented. The wine industry is having some challenges. We're fortunate here though, because although we are selling less bottles of wine, we are seeing an increase in people's willingness to spend on experiences. And we have such a beautiful place here. There's a lot of wine producing regions that don't have things like our plaza and our historic communities and beautiful spaces to visit. Other transitions we're seeing, the K-shaped economy. There are a lot of extreme value shoppers here and a lot of, well, not as many, not a lot, but we are seeing some high net worth people here, but the middle class shoppers just aren't coming as much. It's hard to find them. And so we're transitioning through those things. Also, I'll defer to Tim on this, but anecdotally hearing that there's the leisure travel is still lagging a little bit. We are seeing a good amount of the groups and corporate meetings and things like that, events, weddings, those are actually accelerating. So those are things to lean into. Other things impacting businesses, the costs are out of control. You guys mentioned it from a city perspective, but it's certainly hitting our businesses as well. We're hearing a lot of managers that are now, they can't afford to hire as many staff members, so they are doing the work that would have been done by somebody else. So it's kind of taxing people in our community. Parks and Rec, I think I would love to see us continue working on that. I think, as I mentioned earlier, as we're transitioning to more of an experience economy, having places like the Plaza is just so essential. Gathering places, it's important for our community. We love having our events there, but also the more we can activate those spaces for economic activity would be great. And lastly, I want to just and for this is less of a direct goal, but long term, I think we've seen a lot of success with the Transcendence in the outdoor theater. I've heard over time discussions of could there be some sort of permanent outdoor facility? We've got the Grinstead Amphitheater, but it's a little limited in where we can use it. So are there opportunities to create other gathering places in the community or potentially entertainment venues like that? So anyway, thank you again for having these sessions and involving the community's input, and we appreciate working with you.
I'll let Mark took care of all the glass half full points of view for me, so I won't reiterate all those good things, but I'm Tom Conlon. I serve on as vice chair of the city's Climate Action Commission. I'm here in my individual capacity today, but I want to present maybe the glass half empty perspective. And that's because I'm primarily here to discuss the climate action goals that are intended to address our declared climate emergency here in the city. And I feel like that image of the wagon wheel with the broken spokes was the one that spoke most to me about climate action progress in the city. The accomplishments memo on this topic does not, to my eye at least, appear to have much of a direct nexus to the city's climate action strategy. And I understand why that is, I think. But I come from a business background, so in that world, business leaders are judged usually by the degree to which their outcome metrics match their forecasts, what they say they're going to do. They get rewarded or punished as to whether they hit their goals. And government doesn't work the same way. We all know that. We allow rhetoric and storytelling often to sort of trump the outcome metrics. I personally spent a lot of time looking out into the future. I recently gave a deep read to the tree canopy and inventory report for the city, as well as now the comprehensive transportation plan that's being drafted at the county level. And I also recently reviewed a report by the actuaries in the United Kingdom. These are the people who are professional risk managers. And I'm sorry, got too many windows open on my phone here. I wanted to read a brief section from the introduction of that report. Right here. And they're drawing a connection between the global financial crisis and the fact that we didn't really foresee that happening globally. Most risk managers, most investment managers did not anticipate that. And their statement here is that unmitigated climate change risks planetary insolvency, defined as significant societal disruption driven by climate and nature risks. Without immediate policy action to change course, catastrophic impacts are eminently plausible. These include fires, floods, heat, and droughts. This is a national security issue as food, water, heat stresses, and rising sea levels will impact populations. If unchecked, then mass mortality, involuntary mass migration events, and severe GDP, gross domestic product, contraction are likely. So as we are engaging in our general plan process, and as we are looking out over the next 20 years and starting to think about what our legacy might be, we need to get tighter in connection between our plans and our annual measurement of our functional activities. So I hope to continue on the Climate Action Commission to support the city in tightening that linkage up. We have a list of actions that we have declared we will take, and many of those have been forwarded state and federal level. I acknowledge that. That's some of the reasons why we haven't been able to make progress on some of those items, building code updates and whatnot. But there are many others, some that are completely within policy control of the city itself or within the city's own operation of its own facilities and fleets. We are making steps in that direction, much better, as Mark alluded to, than we were with a lot of changing of personnel a couple of years ago, but we have a lot of work to do in front of us, and I hope the council will recommit to that as a goal for this year going forward. Thank you for consideration.
Good afternoon. And it's good I'm following Tom here. Rich Hodges, 2362 Thornsbury Road. Last few weeks, I've been thinking about the fact that I first visited Sonoma in 1974 as a college student. It's over 50 years ago. And I went for a wine tasting at Gunlock Bundschuh, which happens to be a couple hundred yards down where I've lived for the last 30 years. And so I've watched over the last half century, the wine industry's had a really good run. And we're at an inflection point now, and we're going to see a lot of big changes to our economy through the wine industry and also changes to federal and state funding. So if you're familiar with the concept of the triple bottom line, particularly applied to government, right, that is 1, social equity, 2, environmental stewardship, and 3, economic stability, which is one of the goals you have for the city. And I think what I really want to encourage is that the city lean into the idea of economic stability and economic development, because I really do think we're at an inflection point here economically for the city, the valley, and the county. And so, it's a new reality. The wine industry is changing. It's going to be around, but it's not going to be growing and supporting our economy like it has in the past. And I think wine tourism will probably be affected as well. We do have a lot of assets. And some of those assets, I think, are ones that don't get mentioned often enough. Over on the 8th Street corridor, we have warehouse and industrial space that sits vacant and is available. We have other productive assets in open land, and more open land is going to come as vineyards are ripped out, and the decisions are going to have to be made about what happens with that land, whether it gets planted in houses or it gets planted in some other kind of agriculture or sits empty. We have location, great location. We have a great climate and a great history. So we've got a lot of assets. And I think we really need to think about how those assets are going to be used to make sure that the legacy of the next 50 years is a thriving economy for the city of Sonoma and Sonoma Valley. So I think my bottom line is, I think one of the comments is that essentially, if you look at the triple bottom line, social equity and environmental stewardship, the balance of those things includes a strong economic stability factor, and we can't ignore that. So everything we do depends on having a healthy economy. And I think as a community, We need to get a whole lot better at saying yes and saying yes quickly and acting quickly rather than saying no, can't be done, don't change anything. Sonoma's great the way it is. It's going to stay as it is today because it can't. So thank you very much. I don't live in the city, but I certainly am very interested in the outcomes of what the city council does and happy to participate in the various things that I'm volunteering and active in to help make all this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Guess what I'm here for? My name is Connie Leyline. I'm a resident of the city of Sonoma for 11 years, and full disclosure, I am chair of the Culture and Fine Arts Commission. I feel this city council and staff and community has given our citizens some agency. Our voice is being heard. I love the way you're doing this. As Mark said, it's organically come about, but it really is very helpful. I want to thank you for listening. Last night I attended the State of the Valley. It was excellent. And I heard a lot of new things that I learned from. I'd like to read for you a quote from Ada Limon. When we had a bench dedication, thanks to our former mayor who set up, and the city staff who set up a beautiful event right in front of Reader's Books. Ada shared with us, this is a community that lifts up the arts, whether it's painting and sculpture, or dance and poetry, or simply reading every book you can get your hands on. It's a community that encourages kids who stare out at trees to read about trees and to write about trees and to become not just curious, but creative. I feel lucky to have grown up here, she said, and hope we can continue to make everyone who lives here feel that way too. I think we're talking about legacy and continuing legacy. For 2 years, the arts and cultural advocates in the city have been hoping to speak in support of a more modernized, more robust, more progressive 1% for the arts funding for our incredibly creative city. When you look around our city, however, you don't see much public art. Since I moved here 11 years ago, I am convinced we have never had a more capable, enlightened, and arts-positive city staff, community, and city council than we have now. I've not seen it, and I've not heard about it. I believe this is now the time to ask you for considering building a legacy together. Why in these stressful times? How could we possibly imagine that the arts are so important when there is so much unfulfilled need? There is so much fear. There are so many safety concerns. We know there are immediate needs for affordable housing, food programs, all kinds of public safety concerns. However, the arts fold in beautifully with that, oddly enough. Because when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of need, the basic needs are at the bottom, but belonging and safety are right next to it and completely integrated with this. So our former mayor last night spoke about the city being forward-facing, that is what you all have been doing. You have been proactive and you've been thinking about the future. There are no times perfect for cities to take bold moves. And this year is particularly alarming to all of us, which is why now is the time. Now is the time to give hope, to envision a better community, and we can do it. Often fear takes over, but imagination is the antidote Imagine a great city. I was from a city that was very backwards thinking, and 40 years ago, it's now one of the most progressive cities I know of, especially in feeling a unified city and also very creative and a sense of belonging. And I've seen it happen. And I know that we have every element here to do this. This is why we exist. The arts give us spirit, soul, and the creativity fuels this special place. History, all the cultural elements, we have it all. We have it all. Look at where we're sitting in the Community Arts Center. Why are we having it here? It gives us hope. And it is a perfect place to make these decisions. I moved here because this place is special. I can see the potential. You know it too. You can feel it. You can see it. You know what's here. And the arts, in addition to being very exciting and helpful for the economy because it will help diversify, also really helps us think about safety in different ways and unification in different ways. So let's make it happen. I would like you to, in the fee studies, as you think about how we're moving forward, reimagine the percent for the arts program in a visionary way, recraft it so that it can be expanded like other cities do. There are over 700% for the arts programs in the United States, according to the data from American for the Arts. They typically allocate a very small portion, 1% to 2%, for public art. Ours has in the past been dedicated, our 1% program, for only using city building money. The city doesn't really build much, if you've noticed. The library, how long ago was that? So if we open up our thinking of how to apply the 1% for the arts program, we could really integrate public art into a new public funding capital project program and also help our plaza and the parks expand. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie.
Okay. Somebody's glasses are here at the podium, and I don't know if they're mine. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Tim Zahner. My address is 24 East Spain Street in the historic Toscano Hotel. And I'm going to start with thanking the city for your partnership. I'm at the Visitors Bureau, and working with the city and the state, we were able to move into that great new visitor center. So thank you. I appreciate that. Mark alluded to some things in business, which I agree with, all that there. I do want to note, visitation-wise, the city's TOT, as you saw in the budget slide earlier, was up 15%. So 12 months trailing compared to the previous 12 months trailing. That's the money taken at the hotels. That's more a function of the rates and the occupancy. Occupancy was also up 7%, and that's in the entire valley. So not just, so that part's good, but the part that's not as good, day trippers and getting people to spend money. Mark alluded to what's called the K economy. So we do have some people spending money at high levels, but we also have not as many people spending money at lower levels, which, isn't something anyone in this room directly can control, but it's something to be aware of and how we can do that. They say goals should be measurable and clear and distinct. I'm not trying to take the person's job in charge of running this, but when I have some specific goals for the city, I'm going to lay them out. And I'm so glad that Mike Berger's in the room. Number one, I want to install 24 bike parking spaces around the plaza on the active business-facing frontage. I do appreciate the ones we've put in the middle of the plaza park. Roughly 30 to 40% of your employees live within 1 to 2 miles of the plaza, which could solve part of our parking issue if we just put it there. Also, there's more than 300 bicycles at all the hotels in Sonoma. And every day there's people coming up to spend money. I want them to spend the money at the plaza and in our city and not get in their cars. So let's make it very easy for them to do that. 2, I'm requesting, and I'm so glad Tom Conlon's here, improved east-west public transportation connection between Napa, Sonoma, and Petaluma. You might be aware we're doing a thing called Mascots. I have no idea what that acronym means, but evidently it's something to do with transportation, and we're retooling it for the North Bay. We used to have a connection between Napa and Sonoma. We get a ton of employees coming to hospitality jobs along that corridor. There's currently no good connection. Secondly, with Petaluma and the SMART train being very successful and expanding their service, having a stop from Napa, Sonoma, Petaluma will help both for visitors but also for employees, including the one talking to you. 3, I would like to look at implementing an evening Sonoma shuttle that covers the major lodging and hospitality points around town. The current Sonoma shuttle is fantastic. It's through Sonoma County Transit. It ends at 4:30. This might shock you. Some people work past 4:30. So I would like something that goes from 5 to 10 o'clock that could be used by both visitors, but also people in the hospitality industry. It should work on about a 20-minute loop. We can look about expanding it into the Springs later, but maybe start just in town there. So those are my 3 measurable, actual goals. I really hope you do it. Keep planting more trees. I happen to know one of you up there waters trees in the Springs, but he'll remain nameless. But keep up the good work, Ron. Thank you very much.
Robert Demler, First Street West, Sonoma. I'm very happy that there are no lights up here today. Thank you very much. I came to Sonoma in June of 1971. That's almost 55 years. I was 30 years old, so do the math. I've been a resident for 28. When I arrived in town that June day of 1971, I smelled history. And I decided then that I wanted to live here. And it took me until 1997 to pull it off. And I'm very happy to be here. I will digress a moment. Mark mentioned we had some unsettling times with the council in the past. And when Jack Ding was elected, his goal was not legacy, it was harmony. And he worked on it and planted a seed, and it took. It was like a great tree. And his legacy is the succeeding councils, in my opinion, and I'm at the council meetings almost every time because I like watching your expressions. It's taken, and that seed has grown, and I thank you for that. And I think all of us feel very comfortable with all of you. And I am happy to say I'm a good friend to all of you, and the public appreciates that. Thank you. Now, back to your legacy and back to history and so forth. The word legacy conjures up in my mind history. It's the history made today that will be preserved tomorrow. And we have a great deal of history in this town, as it's been noted. It's often said Sonoma, wine and food and history. Wine and food have always been in uppercase letters. History, in my mind, has been in lowercase letters. And I get the impression that some of you on the council and a number of people in the city, and I sometimes represent Sonoma League for Historic Preservation and sometimes sister cities. Today it's just Robert. I hope you all will make some efforts to bring the word history and preservation to uppercase letters. And I think that's on the back of your minds all the time now, and I appreciate it and thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Jane Hansen, Sonoma Splash Aquatics Director. And thank you for the opportunity today. And thank you most sincerely for your continued support of Sonoma Splash Community Pool. Your investment has made a meaningful and measurable impact on our entire community. Your support helps keep our community safe, healthy, connected, and thriving, from babies to seniors and everyone in between. Because of the city's support, Sonoma Splash awarded over $40,000 in 2025 in scholarships to over 200 individuals for swim lessons, swim camps, and summer camps, opportunities that they might not have been otherwise able to afford. And these scholarships are not just about recreation, but they're about safety, confidence, and belonging. City funding also made it possible for us to have a series of free community days each year. So on the first Sunday of every month from April through October, we offer free community day. The days bring our community together and ensure that everyone, regardless of income, can share this public asset. With continued city support, Splash can expand our critical water safety programming for both youth and adults. And this investment directly reduces the risk of drownings, builds lifelong safety skills, and promotes health and wellness in the community. Sonoma Splash also plays a vital role in our youth engagement and development in our community. We provide a safe, structured environment where young people participate in swim teams, water polo, camps, swim lessons, lifeguard training, and we have a lifeguard gurney on our council, and recreational programs. In the summers, we employ up to 90 community members, the majority of whom are Sonoma youth, and they're helping them to gain job skills, responsibility, and leadership experience. By investing in Splash, the city supports equity and access, strengthens community bonds, and enhances quality of life. Well-maintained community amenities like a public pool increase property values, attract families, and draw visitors to Sonoma. This weekend, we're hosting a big championship meet at the pool where over 300 swimmers and their families will be coming to town for a couple of days. We did our first one last summer. We're hosting this championship. We're going to do another one in the summer. And so it's got the community benefits that have a ripple outward from this facility. So thank you again for your partnership and belief in and support of Sonoma Splash. And I just want to close by sharing a testimonial from second grade South Serini teacher, Chrissy Landini, whose class was part of our pilot program for our second grade Learn to Swim, which we're going to expand to all 6 public schools this spring. And just in writing about the swimming lessons, she said that throughout the lessons, I saw remarkable growth, not only in swimming ability, but also in social, emotional development. Students learned to set goals, overcome fears, and encourage one another. Their confidence in the water translated into greater self-assurance in the classroom. I noticed improvement in participation, teamwork, and pride in their accomplishments. And then she goes on to say, free swim lessons are more than just a recreational opportunity. They are an investment in equity, safety, and the whole child development of students who deserve access to the same enriching experience as their peers. I am deeply thankful for the partnership and funding that made this experience possible, and hopeful that it will continue to reach more children in our community. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Julian Mackey. I wanted to start by reiterating what Mark, Robert, and others have said, and that I think that the legacy of this group of city council leaders is one of bringing stability and strong governance to Sonoma. There was a lot of turnover, there was a lot of uncertainty, and I think this group, we constantly hear from community members, brought a lot of good governance. And so finding ways to codify that is going to be really important as we go through some of these transitions. The 3 things I wanted to highlight, I think, have been largely covered by other people here, but are things that I hear echoed from young families, from seniors to small business owners as I think key issues that face a lot of people in Sonoma. First, is housing foremost. I think at the core of so many of the issues that people articulate who have had to leave this community or are looking to move here or are living here, so much of it comes down to housing. And I think there's some fantastic opportunities for us to explore more options of housing types while still preserving the legacy and feel of the town. I think there are ways for us to make it more predictable and easier for developers who are looking to build here, while also providing meaningful and opportunistic subsidies for certain affordable housing projects, such as the recent Burbank project. Given some lack of funding at the regional and state level, I think the work that you all have done to be opportunistic about these opportunities is really impactful. The second thing I want to highlight is community activation. As we've heard from others, Sonoma has an incredible amount of wealth when it comes to not only the public assets, but also the social capital that's available to us. I listened this morning to a 3-hour podcast on the history of Chinese Americans in Sonoma. And the reason why it was 3 hours was not only because it was full of so much history, but also because there's so much passion there for people who live in this community and have a shared identity around the things that this community holds. And so how can we continue to tap into not only the shared spaces we have, but the shared stories to bring the community together? I think, I see a Stompers jersey here, Transcendence. There's a number of great examples of what we can do as a city to bring people together. And I think that makes it a better place to live, a better place to have kids, and certainly brings a lot of benefits to our small businesses as well. The third item I wanted to cover was this idea of safe and stable. So Patricia talked about the broader significance of safety, right? I think in a lot of ways we just view it, the word safety as, questions of criminality and things like that. But the last year has shown us that there's a broader sense of safety that comes from federal prosecution of certain community members. It comes from certainly natural disasters and the risk of fire, and it also comes from economic uncertainty and change. And so as we think about how we position Sonoma for good change in the future, an emphasis on safety and stability, I think, is paramount for people to have a predictable foundation in which we can all thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Anyone else?
I'm good.
Great.
You want to go first because I'm going to be scattered probably.
I'll take the opportunity to be the more succinct one.
To the warning.
Hi, my name is Erin Tiger. I've been here since 1969. I'm fifth generation. I just want to say thank you. I was at last year's meeting that were held down Broadway, and I'm glad it's here, which used to be the old boys club. It wasn't the Boys and Girls Club, it was the boys club. So, sweet memories at this community center I've had. So, I want to just say a few slightly scattered, but not too much, but that I hope that the city, through you all and you all, can sort of integrate the facilitation of realistic and required change, which Mayor Wellender mentioned, with making history more capitalized, as Mr. Demler said. So I can appreciate that that's a hard balance and that our city needs a lot of things to come together. And I can appreciate that it's a challenge. And I thank you for, like I say, holding this forum to have that come about and have our input be known, and maybe utilized. Then the last thing that got brought up is the sense of safety, not just globally, but more on a personal level and very much nuts and bolts level, is that our city, has a lot of dark spots on its streets. I like to walk. I'm pretty sure-footed, but I am getting older. It's hard to walk in the city when the lights are out at night. Also, it's a safety issue because when people are trying to cross the street, or I'm trying to turn into, let's say, the high school from Broadway to go to Sonoma Splash, where my son has been, greatly benefited from having our pool. It is so hard to see people walking, people trying to cross streets. Like, we really need, I think, to focus on getting some, not only a tree theory, but while you're out there, look at the traffic lights. I mean, not the traffic lights, the street lights, and make sure at least the ones on the corners where people cross are functioning. And anyway, but generally,
Thank you, Aaron.
Anybody else? Very good.
The cleanup hitter. Good afternoon, Mayor Wellender, Vice Mayor Lowe, City Council, staff, Manager Guin, Mike Menifee, 380 Church Street. My father was a career state park ranger, and he moved us here in 1972. And quite literally, at that time, there was one traffic light in the valley between Sears Point and Santa Rosa, and that was at Safeway. There was more than adequate parking space around the plaza, even on the busiest day in the dead of summer. Oh, and I also wanted to paraphrase what Ron had to say last night was, I'm not the dancer that I once was, and I've never really been a good public speaker, period. So excuse the wavery voice, and I'll try not to get teary-eyed. At any rate, today it's hard to find parking, and the parking that we have is very, for lack of a better word, non-delineated. And I really would like to see the city make an effort to expand its delineation of parking spaces from just immediately around the plaza and one block off of it on Spain Street and Napa Street.
First Street West.
First Street West? Yes, and First Street West. There's absolutely no delineated parking on First Street West, north of the plaza, or First Street East for that matter. And we all know all it takes is one person that doesn't know or doesn't care to park inappropriately, and he's essentially taken up an essential space for a second car. And we need to be able to accommodate that a little bit better. Parking. Secondly would be standardization and consistency. It seems like over the last 15 years, and not that it's anybody's fault, if I sound too critical today, that's certainly not my take. It seems like there's been kind of a shotgun approach to traffic safety. There's a myriad of traffic paint on the ground, different sorts of warning lights. We've got flashing red stop signs. We've got flashing red pedestrian crossings. We've got flashing yellow pedestrian crossing signs. If we could standardize that somehow and have yellow flashing pedestrian crossing signs. I know that the red lights at St. Francis Church, like with a school bus, when the school bus red lights are flashing, you're supposed to stop even if nobody's getting on or off the bus, right? If law enforcement, oh, my go-to's not here. If law enforcement sees you skirt around the bus and the red lights are still on, you're either going to get a warning or a ticket. There's a lot of discussion and confusion around the red lights at that crossing. Somebody pushes the button, it takes 30 seconds to activate. In that 30 seconds, traffic's cleared up and the pedestrian is crossed. There's literally no one standing at the corner, but traffic on Napa Street backs up and backs up and backs up and people honk, you start to get a little bit of road rage, which is part of the speeding, I think, in town. There's that. Thirdly, and totally off topic, I was part of the firefighting crew that fought the Mission Hardware fire in 1991. And there was great conversation amongst the city council members at that time that, oh my God, all of the fire hydrants around the plaza, except for one, which is directly across the street from the cheese factory, are all on the business side of the street. The hydrant right directly in front of Mission Hardware was covered in 4 feet of brick. And if the building hadn't collapsed on it, but it was a blowing fire, and the first engine pulled up and there was flames blowing out the front windows, they couldn't have connected to that hydrant. Whereas if it was across the street on the plaza side, that wouldn't have been a big deal, or as much so of. I would like to see the city council try to get fire hydrants to the park side of the street surrounding the plaza, because we're due for an earthquake someday, and that day's getting closer. And there are a lot of masonry buildings around the plaza that will probably collapse, and it would be nice to have accessibility to our hydrant system if the water supply is intact. What am I on, fifthly or sixthly? I really want the city council to respect and try to maintain a little bit of open space in town. That's part of the draw and the attraction to this town, is its greenery and getting back to the trees. It's nice to have trees in a park-like setting and not in an urban forest, although there is something to be said about that as well. My father, in conjunction with Robert Kennard, saved the 2 fields in front of Vallejo's home in the early 70s. The state was going through some severe budget deficits then, and they were entertaining selling those 2 lots to developers for 2- and 3-story condominiums. Think of what this town would be if that had gone through. I know we can't stop growth, but we really need to put our forward-thinking looking glasses on and control what we do. Anyway, thank you again, staff. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for listening to my ramble.
Thank you, Mike. Please recognize the opportunity to ramble with no time limits doesn't come often. So do not hesitate if you are so inclined. All right, I'll take it back to our facilitator, who I believe has some good news.
Yes, and just a big thank you. Want to reiterate our mayor's feedback. Yes.
Thank you. Wanted to reiterate the mayor's feedback. Really appreciate seeing you all. Some of you who were here last year as well. Thank you for coming back. With that, we will adjourn for a 15-minute break, and we'll come back at 2 p.m.
We received several letters from the public sharing their comments, and they're relatively brief. And so to the benefit of both the public as well as staff as well as council, I have taken up the recommendation from my fellow council member that I would read them so we know what else is being expressed. Please. So, but before I do, let me put my glasses on. This letter comes from Sonoma Ecology Center, and it reads as follows. We'd like to see Sonoma's hillside backdrop protected from future development and stewarded for ecological benefits. The city could buy the remainder of the Montini property and protect the Schoenstein property, for example, by buying options, obtaining a right of first refusal, or buying out remaining development rights. Second, create more walkable and bikeable connections between the places people need to go. through places that are green, beautiful, and provide habitat. Create a public map of existing and potential future locations of open space, nature, waterways, and trails. Petaluma has done this. The Ecology Center has a draft of this map, and they will sell it to us for, Water. Focused attention outside of city limits to find solutions to the city's chronic problems of flood risk and groundwater decline. 4, incentivize and streamline infill housing development and redevelopment of all sizes. If we increase the number of local workers who live locally and do not have to commute, this is an ecological win. And lastly, changes to the city's tree-related policies are an important way that we, Sonoma, can do our part to counteract the global crash in biodiversity by prioritizing native tree species that provide food for the struggling native birds and insects. Second letter to us, very short and brief, from a Judith Friedman. Eliminate invasive species which are destroying native habitats. Third letter from Dan Bell. I often take the bus from the plaza and I have to constantly walk in the muddy or wet grass or walk in the driveway, which can be dangerous. Please include this project in the city's priorities to encourage transit use. Regards. And lastly, from Cheryl Shimek. I cannot attend today's meeting, but have a couple of thoughts for your consideration. Change the way the 1% for the arts is calculated. Expand the policy to include more than just what the city builds, as there has not been much built recently. So no arts funding allocation, I assume, has been created. I support the recommendation that Sonoma adopt a program/policy that includes allocation of at least 1% for all commercial buildings, if not all buildings. These funds could then go to enhancing our city with a public art collection, projects, temporary and permanent art, as well as events, all of which supports tourism and local business. And that concludes the additional comments from the community.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate you bringing in those additional voices into today's important meeting. With that, let me tee up where we're headed next. So we are moving into a discussion about your goals and priorities for the year ahead. Really appreciated one of you all mentioned to me how great it is to have such continuity of leadership among your council, that you're really becoming kind of this finely tuned machine in terms of how you work, bringing your distinct perspectives, but really finding out how you work well together going forward. So what we're going to do, having reviewed our 2025 goals, we are going to use that as a starting point. I did have an opportunity to meet with each of you before today, so I'll share some common themes that came up in our broader discussions as a starting point. And then where we're headed, we'll give you actually the details behind each of your goals and give you a little bit of time to sit with that. And then we're going to literally come back up here, show the details live for your past goals, and just think about this is really just a starting point. It's not the end point. How do we want to use what we have, keep what we love, modify, change, and then think about how we want to move it forward and refresh it for 2026, including anything new that you might want to add. So that's where we are today, and this is your opportunity to chew on it together. Anything where you feel like, I'm not sure we can agree to that, not sure really what's there. We might have to put some things in the parking lot if you have that amazing idea, but today's not the day or the time, but we want to make sure we capture it. We do have a place for that, so we welcome those ideas. And again, as I said, to the extent we're getting into problem solving and doing the work today, we might table something, put that back to staff and ask staff to come back to you with additional information if that's needed. And then where we're headed after today is that your city administrator, with the input of staff, will bring all of your thoughts together and bring it back to you at a council meeting in early March, like we did last year, where you'll be able to right-size your goal with the input from staff on resources and constraints to make sure that what we thought about is realistic. Great. Okay. Looking around for head nods. Great. So that's where we are. And so with that, I will turn it over to our city administrator again for some context.
Thank you. And just as a reminder for, this is on, reminder for the council and the staff, and the public, the use of this information we use obviously for right sizing our workforce, our alignment of what we're going to be doing in terms of coming up next in terms of our budget, aligning with our budget process. But what we did last year as well is aligned it with our boards and commissions, which each board and commission took your council goals and then established their work plans based off of those goals. And so I think that's critical that we continue that. And as you heard from some of the public comment today, that is going to evolve and roll into more of a council goal setting, boards and commissions, strategic goal setting, budget process, and then find a full loop of how we put those resources to move these goals forward. So this is really important for us. It does provide that direction and alignment across the board, staff, boards and commissions, council, and ourselves. I do want to say that we are in the process right now of trying to get everyone, we have all of our staff here to listen to this, to all you talk today, because what we are going to be doing is, as Jen mentioned, bringing back to you in March how we can pull this off, how we can adjust your goals. And if we do have to change anything, we'll bring that back at that time and be honest with you about the resources we have and ability we have and making adjustments at that time. And so we do want to hear from you. We'll be listening, we'll be taking notes, and providing that feedback today if possible. If not, we'll come back to you in March and provide more detail. But just want to make sure that you know we're here listening and here for as a resource for you as well. Thank you.
So I want to share some themes that I heard. These universal themes that I've called them are themes that I heard pretty consistently. And this is, again, echoed, not surprisingly, from your community, and that you all are a great bridge to the community. It's really clear that in Sonoma, and consistently, honestly, throughout the state, housing remains a critical priority. All of you agreed that that was your top priority, and that although we're doing some planning, we clearly haven't achieved our goals. So there's lots of frustration around that. And, there is a desire to move towards units built, which is, what housing really matters. Plans are plans, but housing actually matters. So there is an agreement that continues to be a focus, and a recognition that policies are sometimes what's required and that cities aren't necessarily the developers. So there is some tension around that, of course. A lot of excitement around our Parks and Recreation Department, including the staffing we have. The department doesn't exist without the people to do the work. So that is a major step forward. And of course, again, a thanks to the community for voting for the general fund tax measure that supports that, which really went to both public safety and this Parks and Recreation Department. So there's definitely a lot of energy from building the department, which needs to happen, but also moving on to now executing the work of providing the services that can come from a robust Parks and Rec department. And then also recognizing that right now we have a department of one. So, to the extent that we have in the past gotten by with a lot of support from the community and recognizing the value of those partnerships, that'll have to continue, of course, and we value that. The next one, economic development and tourism, that was also reiterated from our public comments, so we appreciate that sentiment. Really wanted to focus on making Sonoma a destination, of course, supporting our local businesses to make sure they're thriving as a vital part of our economy. And then, of course, just an acknowledgement of city finances being so closely tied to our being an economic and tourist base. So I want to just note the integration of those. Appreciate the financial stability that was achieved. And I just want to put a point, looking at cities more broadly, certainly in the region, but throughout the state, it's not trivial to say that a city has a balanced budget right now. And given the economic uncertainty that we're seeing, whether that's sales tax in a community that's based on tourism connected to the wine industry, we don't take that for granted, that will remain. We do leverage our reserves when we need to, but also know that that's not an endless well. So there was just an acknowledgement that there's a lot of great work that's been done to achieve this financial stability, but certainly that's a short-term opportunity. And, the goal is to get greater financial stability in the long term, and that's not trivial. The strong council staff dynamics, again, really, really important. I can't tell you how much I see in other cities where that is not the case. You've seen that in your city, and now you're starting to see the benefits of what it takes when you have a highly functioning council that works really hard to work well together and work well with staff, recognizes what their role is, what staff's role is, works really hard to stay in their lane. And today, this is about the council's lane. So really appreciate that. And I know staff is in the back listening, really tuned in to the things that you all care about, but also looking for places where there is council consensus to move forward. Not looking for pet projects, not looking for things that one person cares about, because staff can't work that way. Your challenge is how to figure out how to get the stuff done that you want to get done, that you think are important for your city, but doing that by speaking with one voice. And that's what today's about. So some other themes that came up, which again was reiterated by the public, which is climate adaptation, fire hazard, disaster mitigation. The new state fire hazard maps that were created certainly are creating challenges. It's really important work, but it also trickles down into literally the trees, the housing, the infrastructure we have on the ground, and what's required to be prepared for natural disasters when they come. So the federal funding may or may not be there. That funding is not trivial. And to the extent that any of the funding is uncertain, that makes it really difficult to do this work, because this is really what the federal government should be helping us at the local level to do. And then, of course, the proactivity and planning, the more we do, we're better prepared when it comes to disasters based on how well we've planned. So there's definitely a recognition among your council about that. Plaza maintenance and beautification. So both thinking about how do we maintain it so it looks beautiful, but also how do we think about the development of the plaza and how it could be a destination, both from a tourism perspective, from residents being able to enjoy it, as well as being a hub of business. And then, of course, thinking about some of the things that were mentioned earlier about activating that space. Leveraging the amazing climate we have to be able to be outdoors, as well as tying that into the historical character that plaza represents, is really important. And then the last point, had to do with renter protections and thinking about how that population is the most vulnerable, particularly folks who are in mobile home parks or in an urgent crisis, but potentially an opportunity for broader protections in place. Also, what was mentioned, the opportunity to think about diversity and social equity that's inherent in this goal. So those were the things. So I'm looking for sort of head nods. These were the things. There were definitely other things that were brought up. I don't want to dismiss those things, but these were the things that were sort of brought up. The first page, the kind of things that were really pretty universal, and then these were the areas where we had multiple people who shared that perspective. So that's where we are. And then where we're headed is we are now going to move into bringing back to you the 2025 goals that we had in each goal area. And we're going to do a deep dive into each segment. So you have 5 broad goal areas. And we're going to try to take maybe no more than, we'll call it 15 to 20 minutes, just to try to think about our time today to do a deep dive into those. And before we do that, we are going to turn over to you and give you a little bit of time to reflect on the goals that you have, because we're going to bring those up one at a time and move through essentially kind of a wordsmithing process to change what's there close enough for today to reflect the input you want to have. And then David and his team will take that back and bring something that's more fully polished and that is tied in with resource and capacity constraints to make sure that it's realistic. That's what will come back to you in early March. Okay, so what council members have in front of you is one page on each of these goals from 2025. So this is a starting point. And the ask is for you to think about the areas you care the most about, going through page by page. We'll give you sort of 7 to 10 minutes to work on that. And then we'll come back and we'll kind of go through them one at a time. And as I said, we'll take 15 to 20 minutes to talk about each page respectively. Patricia, you have a question.
We're going to take 7. That was very confusing, those instructions.
Okay, got it. So
are we going through the whole thing in 7 minutes or each one at a time?
We're going to give you time to just pause and reflect and just put some notes on paper yourself for 7 to 10 minutes by yourselves individually to just, they're all
the goals. That's the question. I have a specific one.
Yes.
And every single goal, not one at okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So you're going to go through all of them. I mean, we could do that one at a time if you want, if that's your preference. But my thought was that you just go through them, make some notes on the things that you want to change, add, improve, things you feel like don't serve us anymore. So really kind of just get some notes on paper for folks who like to reflect on their own before they start speaking. That's the goal. And then once you've had a chance to do that, we'll come back and then you can share your input collectively so we can get to sort of one final version today. Yes.
We're doing this on the 2025 goals. Is
Yes.
this anticipation to design the 2020? I want to know what the linkage is.
Yes, the linkage, and this was actually pretty consistent with the feedback that I had when I talked to each of you, that many of you sort of looked at that and said, we're not done with that. That's a multi-year goal. We're going to have to keep working on that. Maybe I tweak it, but honestly, what I heard, and you can tell me if I'm different. Actually, the first question will ask once I come back to you is like, is there something missing from any of these big buckets that we want to flag or add or talk about? We certainly can do that. What I had heard from my conversations with each of you was like, this feels pretty good and we need to continue, that these will continue to be our priorities for 2026. And the question is, if that's true, what do we want to take from 2025 that is still in progress that we need to keep doing? We're going to keep that there. What do we want to add? Or what? And so what you'll see behind that you have in front of you is one page for each of these. So the goal is to take our 2025.
I get it, but I also, we've had community input, and which we did not have when we had those conversations with you. And I'm always respectful of what I hear and what I have been submitted. And so I think there should be at least an opportunity, to weigh what we've heard as well that may not be on these pages, to somehow say, there should be like a subcategory, for example, under parks and recreation. I heard, I heard a lot of things about parking bikes and things like that. I mean, there may be a spot for it there. But I don't want to lose, because I don't want people who've submitted things and have testified and so forth to say, oh, well, they already met, we weren't there and they came up with those and, what the hell. So I just want to be mindful of that, of what I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying about that. In fact, I have the same thoughts. But it looks to me as we look at it, you're not here next year.
Oh, sorry.
Hello? Okay, as we look at housing, for instance, somebody brought up hillside preservation. And if that's important to us, then there's a way to incorporate that into the housing goal that would roll over for 26. So we're enhancing these because I think these are relatively solid, and we can build on these and expand them and create a 26 plan. That's my sense of it.
Okay.
Well, I'll just add to that. I agree. I think what we talked about was providing a place to start and build off of. So rather than a blank sheet, we thought we'd start with what we had before, knowing that you're going to hear stuff, you have new ideas. So we'll be able to cross things off, add things, modify things, add subcategories. And that's what we're hoping to do over this next 5 to 7 minutes. Just kind of think about that a little bit, and then we'll go around. We'll go one by one and say we can take that off. We're done with that. Let's add a subcategory because we heard this from the public. But this is that chance to do.
Okay, so if I could just follow up on my comments that, so what we're doing is not just looking at these, but adding things as well.
This is where you were last year. So what do you want to change?
I just want to be clear about that. Okay, thank you.
I agree with that. I would also add, if there's something very specific, again, your staff is here. So if someone said, I really want you to change the hours for the library, or we should change the hours for community hall to have, that might be an administrative thing, or that might be the, library services director, which you don't have. But like, that might be something that department head would be vigorously taking notes on, like, let us look and figure out if we could do that or not. If we're like, hey, parking is terrible and we just need to paint West Street better, I'm hoping you have a public works person who is sort of taking notes on, like, let me go look at West Street and figure out how I get that into my public works plan for next year. That wouldn't have to be a council goal. That would be something that public works is like, you're right, let me thank you, let me go figure that out, and I'll figure out when I have money for paint. So not to say anything's going to get lost here, but it may not show up here specifically if it's something that can be handled at a detailed level. Okay, off you go. So we'll take maybe 7-ish minutes, and I'll look around for when your pens are down. Feel free to get more refreshments or hit the bathroom again, and then we'll come back together. And if you need more time, we can do that. And then we'll kind of take these in order, starting with, like, is there any big bucket that's missing? That's your biggest question. that I got was that we're actually really doing well and we're really on track, and we need to keep doing more of what we're doing. And it's not perfect, so now's our time to continue to tweak to make sure that the direction we give to staff is more clear and is grounded in today's current reality. The environment's changed a lot in the last year, and some things haven't changed. So what we were proposing is that we take a look at what we have and use that as our starting point. From there, we'll figure out what we're going to keep, which might just be the things that they're still there. We don't even have to talk about them. Check, we need to keep that around. What do we want to eliminate? Like maybe it just doesn't serve us. Maybe we check that box, we've already done it. Maybe the landscape is changed and it's not a priority anymore. Of what we have up there, what do we maybe need to tweak it or modify it? And then lastly, what do we want to add to this big bucket? So I also, before we dive into those, I want to just go back to these. What I heard from you is that these are still your priorities. And I want to pause here to say, is there something major that we should be doing instead as a priority that isn't captured here? I'm not talking minutia or in the weeds, but is there like a whole big bucket we're missing or something that you think should be replacing that? That's not what I heard when we talked, but I'd like to know now, after everything you've heard.
Yeah, so I did mention this when we spoke. And so this is something that I don't know if it's own bucket or it needs to be something within each of the priorities that is prioritized. And I think that we are in a period of time when there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of issues that potentially will arise that could come upon us very quickly. And when I think of emergencies, I'm not thinking of just climate, although that certainly is one, but financial emergencies, there's healthcare emergencies, all of those emergencies that we're facing because of the cutting in federal funding and the changing in many policies, Fortunately, we're in the state of California where some of those other policies are going to still be withheld. But so is there the idea of how are we thinking ahead and looking and being prepared for risk mitigation so that we're looking at the things we want to do, but at the same time we're saying, what are the things that could potentially come down they're really black swan events, and that was mentioned earlier about the financial crisis. That's what it was, a black swan event. It happens 1 in 1,000 times, but we're seeing 1 in 1,000 weather events happening, so how do we integrate that across this? Or is it a separate bucket? But I would rather, see that that's kind of a priority in each area to be thinking about that. With housing, it has to do with how you're building the housing, right? Who's going to play a really important role of how that's going to be climate safe. So that was my one comment around all of it.
Thoughts on that? Are you responding to that, or do you have a different thought? Great.
I was thinking, so in the fourth bucket of unification annexation, there is in there continuous disaster preparedness with a regional approach. So, because I was thinking along those lines, but I was thinking that perhaps we want to retitle this particular section to Sonoma Valley-wide impact something. I don't know. You guys will think of some jazzy term for it, but in there could be about all of the things that affect us regionally, sort of a regional bucket that doesn't necessarily have to be tied to any sort of unification or policy connectiveness, but it could be in there as bullets, but I heard like 8th Street East brought up. I mean, so that's part of the annexation, consideration or whatever. I heard about shuttles going east and west. I mean, so I just feel like that particular bullet would be better served this time, not losing anything, because I think everything there is good.
Yeah.
But it's a place that we could put some of Patricia's concerns, because we're not going to be able to, when these kind of cataclysmic events happen, whether they're political events or fiscal events or whatever they are, they're going to be regional. They're not going to be confined to the little city of Sonoma. So anyway, I think if we sort of retitle that in some way and put some of those issues in there, that would be a place
Okay.
for that.
So it sounds like there's a few opportunities. So the financial piece you mentioned, or the housing piece, might be something that we want to capture in a specific bullet under housing with that lens. There's also something here to the extent we're talking about regional thing. As a small city, both geographically, staff-wise, budget-wise, and otherwise, being a great regional partner is really essential. Obviously, climate doesn't know city boundaries. So thinking about that from a regional lens also makes sense. So we could talk about that when we get there in terms of what this bucket really is, and if there's a way to reframe that to be more inclusive of the things you all care about. Okay. Other thoughts? Yes.
I think that's a great idea, and I'm just wondering if that can't be a kind of an overarching filter that comes down in all the categories, because it really gets down to forward thinking. You know, we do live in a bubble, but we should keep our focus in a bubble, and that we need to be mindful of things that could impact us and our neighbors. And I love that idea, because one of the things we heard from the audience is that we are, at least in some areas, forward thinking. And I think that should be something that we continue to try to challenge ourselves with within reason. And again, thank you for adding that.
So perhaps a lens or a perspective we want to take as we think about goals is being forward thinking. And you also mentioned sort of risk mitigation and
also under this institution and relaxation, maybe we could added community development, because springs area always of parts, something like that. Yesterday, like groups. We should continue to work with them, especially right now immigrant issue. And a lot of the people just have some parts. Doesn't mean they don't have issue. We need to gather more communication, work closely with the nonprofit like Lagoose, GS, and so on. So families here. And then, not necessarily the people will call officially relaxation, but we are the need. We improve our own service. We gather together, gather community, get stronger.
Thank you for that. So what we're doing here, what you're starting to see that we're starting to do here is we're starting to tweak and modify this. So I'm going to propose, if it's okay, that we hold off until we come back and really see what's in this bucket, and then revisit this at the end to say, did we really address that? Is it its own thing? Does it really show up where it needs to be in these appropriate places? But this is something for now. Maybe we'll just leave that as an idea, and then when we get to that topic, we can think about what is this bucket really, and is it worthy of a renaming or a rebranding, or is it something else? Okay. Anything else in terms of like, we just don't have the buckets right. There's something massive missing. If not, we're going to move then into, we'll just pick our first bucket here and start our deep dive. And again, we have time together, and this is not meant to rush you, and also not meant to say this is the last time, like speak now or forever hold your peace. That's not the intention either.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can I just add one thing, and it's really kind of a broad stroke. I would like to suggest that as we go through the goals and the priorities and the various sub goals, that I just would like to remind us of the filters that we currently have, and that is recognizing our 3 revenue buckets, and we only have 3, and I'm not envisioning anything significantly more, and if so, please tell me. But as we're thinking about these goals, what's the impact to TOT? You know, what is it to sales? What could it be to property tax? And not to say that we have to check all 3 by any means. It's just that I would like us to be kind of mindful, recognizing that we realistically don't have significant other buckets. And so in so doing, are some of these goals going to continue to protect and or enhance or at least sustain the buckets the buckets we have? So
Okay, great. So we can't divorce ourselves from the funding sources of the things that we do. So keeping in mind, this is how the city funds the amazing services that you all provide. Okay, great. So where we are is these council members, you have these words in front of you, and is that in here for the community roughly? Kind of. Okay. Yes. Okay. So, so the goal here, what I want to do is, my thought is if you love it, we probably don't have to belabor it because it's important. We're going to keep it. So, I want you to obviously start with what are we keeping? But what I'd love to know, is there anything that we can do to eliminate this for whatever reason? It's done. We finished it. It's evolved. So we'd love to know what you think we can eliminate from this. And then from there, we'll move to how is something here just not quite right anymore? We're thinking about it differently. So anything obvious that you think we've done and we can take off the list?
I'm not against a housing summit, but if we're going to do another one, I mean, there's several of them. I'm involved in housing in my day job, so there's a lot of housing summits that are coming up. So I would change that to participate or send people to some of the housing summits that are happening. There's several that are happening that we could do. And I think that we'd probably get more ideas being in a bigger pool with a lot more people than conducting something ourselves and turning around the ideas that we already have.
Okay. So there's a thought that we could say perhaps this would be participate in regional housing summits.
Okay. I think we are planning one here, and one is in the works. Is that correct?
I could talk to that real quickly. We are working with Supervisor Hermosillo's office to set up a housing summit. But we talked to her about coordinating with other resources for the community, especially immigrant resources. And so we're working on that now. So I think what you're suggesting works well with that and would support that, participating in those regional efforts than doing our own thing.
Okay. So does this language capture it, or do we need to tweak that in some way so that we capture what you all just nodded? Okay.
I just didn't want to limit it to.
Okay.
The wording, I think the first sentence, it is not necessary.
This one?
Yeah, increase in the house.
Implementing the housing element. Uh-huh.
Do you think no, and this is too general. Because this is
Maybe come in after my wife will get her talking to us.
I mean,
Okay, so there's a question, we need to implement the housing element, which is sort of always happening. So it's a legal requirement for us to do that. And it sounds really broad in that there's a whole lot. I mean, my community, our housing element is 500 pages or something. There's a lot to it. So it could be that it's acknowledging it's a lot of work and that we're going to continue to be implementing it, but it also could be maybe not that helpful. Is that what you're saying?
yes, that is always happen.
Yes. Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
I personally think it needs to stay, and the only reason why it was one of the significant components of the housing element is, of course, the mandate to achieve our RHNA numbers. And I really think that we need to be cognizant if we don't continue to respond to Sacramento, and you guys know I don't particularly like Sacramento, I think that needs to stay up there, because everything that we do subsequent to that kind of take back to say, okay, is this current with our housing element, or are we deviating, or what? And if we're deviating, is it for good reason? So I just see it as a bullet reminder that our goal is to keep Sacramento out of our town.
Okay. Other thoughts on that? Or other ideas? Okay. So we're sort of in the both eliminate or change. So anything else we want to change in terms of word choice, that where we could be more precise, more in keeping with what we're actually doing, acknowledging the work we've already done? Anything else? Yes, I think I saw a hand over here. I think we haven't heard from John, actually.
Okay.
Well, thank you. The Explorer partnership with school district and private landowners for housing options, well, specifically to the school district, we've had 2 opportunities that I can think of to try to develop a housing opportunity there. And neither of those have happened. I'm not sure that it will happen because the school is still using these properties, and they just announced Presswood's going to be the charter school. So, I don't think, and David, maybe is the school district interested in working with us to provide affordable housing for teachers?
Del Harrison is still available. There's minimal use on that site, and there could be some potential. I wouldn't want to take it off because there's still they own a lot of property, south of the high school.
Then I would suggest that should be more of a.
I'm going to turn to staff. To the extent that we're giving direction to staff, is there something specific that staff would do if we were to either take this off or tweak it or change it in some way?
Having it on there just is sufficient for what we need. We are talking to the school districts and with other private landlords like the hospital and others about what their desires are, and then identifying what we need to do to fix that, like the church site and changing the general plan, doing affordable housing overlays. So having that as a priority just helps focus us on that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification. Anything else on here that we want to eliminate or change? Yes. Annette, there was a few, and I know, Patricia, you had a hand as well. Okay, great. Love that.
We heard last night about the housing bond, if we hadn't heard about it before, but I'd like to somehow flag that there could be a potential statewide housing bond. And it sort of goes to Ron's 3 buckets of money. It could be bucket number 4. So,
so would that involve us supporting?
Yes, obviously we can't, that would be something is not agendized and we can't discuss, but I think we should at least flag the fact that there's potential in a housing bond going forward. And the other thing is, as far as renter protections, that's not.
Sorry, can I pause you there 1 second? Sure. I just want to make sure we capture that. So what I heard you say was that it's potentially a statewide housing bond.
Yes.
And if it is, it's not something that we're going to take action on here, other than to potentially, if we think it's a good idea for us, we could decide to write a letter. There's things we could do to support it.
We have to do that at a public meeting and agendize it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. But the request is to say that we want to acknowledge that might be happening statewide, that could have an opportunity for us here in Sonoma.
Exactly. We should stay in the loop about what it's about and make sure that we're in it.
So stay informed and participate in any state housing funding that might benefit Sonoma.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, your second one had to do with renter protection.
Yeah, I just wanted to, a lot of people see that and they immediately jump to, rent control, which it could be, but also we've heard that there are rental units that don't have air conditioning or heating or appliances. And that I just want to make sure that in renter protections that we're also looking at potential policies that might also benefit renters in other ways other than the rent control.
So what I hear you saying there is potentially for renter protections to involve their ability to stay in their home. So affordability, maybe access and quality of life, or something around the quality of what's.
Of life.
Yes.
Especially with
livability. There's probably a word that someone could tell us here that I don't have the top of mind, but something that speaks to the quality of what is available for renters that hits a minimum level. Okay.
I think compliance is basically the language that people are using when they're looking at things that need to be available. I mean, I know.
I wanted to say, a ping pong room or something, when you say quality of life, it could be, sauna. I mean, I'm talking about, it's not basic.
Okay. Essential services or something. Okay.
And also, and here, one project maybe we can follow, and also it's kind of good in the partnership from with our hospital and the health district, because last year.
Is that on this one in terms of one of the examples of a private land ownership or something else?
And a partnership, a local partnership, to because State Treasurer Fiona Ma visited here, and we talk about affordable housing issue. Of course, this is our city's most urgent issue. And she agreed, and also her office could provide some of the money and special funding. And also we visited a site, parking lot, across the street of the hospital. Mm-hmm. And then also I did some research with the city manager and Jennifer Gates and what is the zoning. And we got a feedback, but later, and formal executive director, John, after that, I'm not sure she followed up or not followed up. I hope we can follow this.
Okay.
A lot of the opportunities, we just make full use of it. And they have this kind of desire to help us, each, because that is
Is that
maybe could
is her office potentially? Does that potentially? It's not about housing bond per se, but really it's statewide funding.
Yeah, it's not in a state fund. That is the under the treasury offices. They have the special, smallness size and funding for the remote areas.
Okay.
Because here they treat us as a remote because her office gave us $6 million during the past 3 years.
Amazing.
And the low interest and the non-interest funding. So that they want to build up this kind of relationship.
Okay, great. So, okay, anything else here in terms of either? Yes, thank you.
This is going to be kind of a general comment, but I want to share it because I want to not mislead the public. I don't discount that housing is an absolute priority, but I have failed miserably in my 3 years to figure out part of my campaign platform, and that is how to develop workforce housing. And I think given the harsh realities of where we live, both on the positive side and the negative side, we can't do it. And I don't want to suggest to the public that we can. So what I would like to say is I definitely want to continue to focus on affordable housing. But that really is affordable housing with a capital A that gets incentives and state support. Plus, we have our inclusionary requirements that will continue to add to the affordable. Everything else, even though you'll hear architects with their flowery words that says it's affordable by design, in this area, given labor, materials, price of land, entitlements, it doesn't add up to workforce housing. So what I would like to do is make sure that we continue a big push for affordable housing, but the reality is it's affordable housing, market rate, workforce, I think is a dream that is just that. It's a dream, and I don't see it being realized.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is that that although this is up here, it's not something that we should probably focus on. Which is not to say we can't do these other things, but
Right.
putting it up here might not.
Nobody's been able to tell me on any fronts how we can do it, both professional and government agencies just can't tell me how we create it in this community, given the attractiveness we have, and that we can't restrict. It's hard to restrict other than the affordable capital A to say, well, you make just that. You can buy this at market rate housing and then somebody else comes along and says, no, I make more. I should be able to buy it. So again, I just want to be transparent with the community to think that we're not chasing down some rabbit hole that we just can't conquer.
So we've heard the need. We heard that earlier from the public. What I'm hearing is that, it may be a bridge too far. We're not clear how to do it, but it sounds like the need is there. Others have thoughts on that?
I understand what Ron is saying, and if I remember correctly, the collaborative that put together their housing roadmap did prioritize workforce housing. I'm trying to remember exactly. You were our city manager, David Guin, was there on that panel, and they had developers here, and both for-profit and nonprofit. I would not take it off because I think it's such a priority, although I appreciate us being realistic with people about what we're up against.
So having not been to that seminar or that conference, I would suspect that when they're talking about workforce housing, they're talking about the hospitality workers. They're talking about those that are at a certain economic level, which we've already when we talk about inclusionary housing and so on. It's tied in with a median average income. the workforce housing that I've always interpreted with that phrase was the teachers, the firefighters, the landscape architects, those that make more money and they don't qualify for the those various categories, low, very low, whatever. And so my initial thought to that, and this isn't, I'm not going to die on this hill, but my initial thought to that workforce is what we've all talked about. Mark Bodenhammer has brought it up a number of times about the fact that our businesses can't get workers. Well, these are the workers that have to drive in from Vallejo or wherever.
So I'm going to interject. I'm going to use my facilitator prerogative for just a quick moment, only because I think the question, I've heard two different things, which is I've heard that this is important and I've heard that it's both really hard. I don't know if we're going to solve it here. So I haven't heard that there isn't a need, but I haven't heard that we have an idea of how to do it. And I so appreciate, we don't want to mislead the public on that. I don't know if we're going to solve that here. I might recommend we put this back to staff to figure out whether this language is helpful or not, or if there's a way to rephrase that in terms of what we're trying to do. Because I have heard you all say that that's important and we don't have a clear path. But if that's okay, I'm going to put a pin in that just for the sake of time to move us forward. And I appreciate you giving me that privilege. I want to move us into anything else you want to change, or if there's anything you think is just missing that we should add. We have a few more minutes on this one, and I want to move us into the next category, if you don't mind.
So this is an addition, and this is actually, I think Councilmember Gurney thought maybe the hillside protection. I don't know if that goes here or in Parks and Recs. So my thought was maybe that's part of Parks and Recs versus part of housing. I see how it affects housing, that we're saying we don't want development there. So it is kind of looking at, although many of these areas are outside, they're in our sphere of influence and outside of our UGB. So I'm just not sure where it fits. If it fits here, I think it's a good thing to put here. If not, I think it maybe is under kind of more, I think the process is more of a park and rec process of, what type, are we going to do something with the land? So there's a conservation easement or something. I see that kind of more in that bucket, but just wanted to bring it up here just to make sure we put it in the right place.
Okay, I'm seeing a head nod here, so perhaps we bring it up there, and if we decide we're wrong, we can always come back. So we'll put a pin in that and actually make a note of that. Okay. I see a questioning look.
Have a policy on hillside protection now?
Well, technically speaking, and I think David can concur, that if you look at our zoning, we have very, very little hillside development. I think there was the big debacle there at Brazil and 4th Street East that we have like 3 or 4 lots, and that was it. Beyond that, even though we have a very definitive hillside development section, that's it, based upon current.
Okay, so I'm going to ask us to put a pin in this for 2 reasons. One, we're going to talk about this when we get to Park and Rec, and then we're also not going to solve it here. So we may just agree to put it on there in the words that you all think make sense, and then we can have staff go back and chew on that. Thank you for bringing that up. Great clarifying question. Anything else on this slide?
Another question regarding creating funding plan and the policy for use of the housing trust fund. I would like to add an option how to use not only the policy. Policies last year. This year we can study how we can use it. For example, if possible, we can purchase a piece of land and putting up there instead of the right now money sitting there. Sitting there, that means losing out the value.
Okay. So what I heard you say is that we have the policy already. So we don't, not yet.
I think what you're asking for is the policy for how to use the.
Yeah, how to use. Okay.
Okay.
We have.
No.
Well, we have it on the screen.
We do have a policy we have language on the housing trust fund and how it could be used. But what this goal was to reevaluate that, look at that, have a discussion about how we want to update that policy for other creative ways to use a housing trust fund. Because as you remember, we did use that for the protection of the affordable housing units, and that was explicitly listed in that policy for that housing trust, that's allowable use. But the thought was to reopen that and reevaluate it, and that's what this is that we haven't done yet.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Great.
We shall continue. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm gonna recommend we move on. And if you're like, wow, I forgot something, we need to come back, we can. But for the sake of time, I'm gonna move us forward. Okay, next slide. No, all good. Okay, so we're back to Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. So we're going to keep everything here unless you decide otherwise. So the first question, is there anything here we can eliminate? And then we'll move into what do we want to tweak or reword or change?
Well, it seems like we have a Parks and Recs department. So we can eliminate that as a plan for a dedicated one. We have a dedicated one. I mean,
and could we celebrate that for just a quick moment?
So celebrate that, yes.
Amazing. Take a bow. Okay, amazing. Great. Okay. What else? Yes.
Are we on the part to add?
Not yet. If you're okay to hold that for one quick moment. Anything else you want to change that we can further eliminate, make it tighter, more concise, or reword? Yes.
Like to eliminate the development of a park on the west side of town. Just joking.
Them's fighting words.
Yes.
So, can I?
5 years I've waited.
So I'd like to comment on that one as a landscape architect who loves parks. I fully support the idea of developing the concept and the vision. But again, I want to be a little bit more cautious on adding to the plate of Parks and Rec maintenance anything more until they've had a chance to kind of catch up and be able to lift the level of maintenance in our current acreage. Again, I'm not saying no by any means, because I'd be foolish as a landscape architect to say nothing, but I'm just simply saying, let's develop the vision, let's get excited about it, but let's take a pause and give our newly formed department an opportunity to lift the tide.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a level of maintenance that we're looking for and funding that goes with that for all of our parks. Okay, got it. Yes.
Absolutely understood, which is why I expressed this last time, the green links is something that I have a similar concern. The difference being that, the development and park on the west side is for people who could be, that aren't that mobile, who can't amble through town or don't drive to the plaza. That's why that park is there, is to serve a population, primarily seniors in mobile home communities who do not have access to a park. So that's why it's priority. And yes, I will die on that hill. So the green links, though I have nothing against it, that would involve a bit of revenue, and it's creating something new. It's lovely. But, again, I'm not advocating to take it off, but I am mindful also of the cost of something like that, which could also involve purchasing property. We would like to create a link, but we don't own the land there. So I think in everything we do, we have to be mindful of the cost. So
okay,
and that's not the only. That I'm just pointing out. It's not the only thing.
Okay, so I'm just going to call out that I'm seeing both of these on here as consideration of the establishment, progress in the development. So we're not saying no, it needs to be right-sized relative to the resources and constraints that we have. So these feel like things that we want to continue to keep on our radar that are important to this community, and our progress on that might be delayed or slowed based on the reality of what it takes to get the work done. Okay. Anything else?
I'll just make a quick comment on the green links. I think that it's utilizing, there's community organizations that are doing work on it and doing some of the work that's costly or resource intensive of creating the map they have done that. And I think that there is the understanding that it's not like you create this map and tomorrow it exists. It's like, yes, as priorities within that, you identify the low-hanging fruit and go forward, and working with our or local organizations like the Land Trust, so that those many of those costs are taken on or funds are raised by other organizations besides the city, but having the support from the city where the city can't support, and not necessarily, financial. Of course, resources are a financial cost, but not like laying out money to buy land between an area where we got to buy this property. I don't think that that's the concept. The concept is to look and understand where there would be gaps and what can be done. And then the only other thing I would say about the green links, I think that and also about more parks, is there is increased, as we age, we're looking at a current aging population and how they function in the world, and the future aging population will function differently than our current aging population, because that population is going to be utilizing more mobility efforts that are available than the current population. It's, a more mobile population already. And so if we're thinking from a future, let's think of what the future populations, how they get around. They may be using many more capabilities that are not, walking, but they don't want to be on a road. They'd rather be on a pathway, right? And they're in a mobile transportation vehicle of some sort. So just so that we're thinking, it's not just for today's population.
Right.
So I just want to strengthen the idea. I think that the idea of green links is legitimate. It's just unfortunately a little bit vague as far as fully understanding how that can be accomplished. I think it warrants staying there, but it just is something as the vice mayor has mentioned, is just we need to be cognizant of as we support, what does it look like cost-wise, and what are we gaining? What's the return on investment? But I love that idea. I do have a comment down on the cemeteries. I'm excited about what we've done, but I'm pressing for the development of Friends of the Cemetery, which is a subcategory that you guys can ignore. But I think the other thing that I want to do besides self-sustaining is I think we need to celebrate. We need to celebrate the history and what it's offered, because I just think that down through the years it's been kind of this under-recognized. And part of celebrating it may also contribute to the self-sustaining, coming up with some means of making some money in an appropriate way, not abusive. So.
Okay.
Oh, one last one.
Yes, please.
I loved some of the comments, and I've had this discussion, and I'd like to think that it's still on the table. I really would like us to put money where our mouth is relative to the love for the arts program. And I still would love to see a study for what it would look like for a 1 to 2%, not just on certainly buildings that the city builds, because you're right, we're never going to get a public art fund, and not just necessarily commercial buildings. I'd like to see what it would look like for everything that gets built in Sonoma, because we talk about the importance of art. We are such an incredible place to put public art, but it doesn't come cheap. So I know we're doing a nexus study on the fees and impacts and what we need to be careful for, but I don't want to lose sight of that. And I do want to try to see if we can push the envelope so we could truly generate some money to see some exciting things happen.
Okay, so we have funding sources potentially tied to our arts programs and partnerships. Other changes, and then we can also move on to add.
Well, so I think we're identifying that the 1% for the arts, and looking at, we haven't said, looking at, well, if it's not 1%, what can we do, right? But we wanted to broaden it. How do we get the money? It's kind of like, what will get the most money? The other thing is, I think within that is looking within Parks and Recs is cultural exchange with our sister city in Mexico. And also there's potentially other sister city relationships in Mexico that may be happening on a regional basis. And that cultural exchange could benefit our cemeteries. We could broaden our Dios de los Muertos celebrations to really bring in, because that's what you do. You honor the history of those that are dead. And so I think there's ways for us to look at how are we linking, and that we have people from our sister cities that are coming here to Sonoma to look at where they could be on the plaza potentially, to have some stores where there would be cultural exchange with arts from that region. Most of the Latinos in the valley are from Michoacan or Jalisco, and that Pátzcuaro is where in Michoacan, and we're also talking to other cities in Jalisco. So that could be, like, how do we make this cultural exchange also be an economic driver for the city? And then during the holidays, you're playing Coco all the time. And so then you get everybody from Japan that comes to Sonoma to celebrate Coco and dress up for Day of the Dead, and you make lots of money. Anyway, sorry.
Sister cities and culture.
So I support the idea of the friends of the history. That is history really is a great asset for us. And also I want to.
This here?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And also I will take this opportunity to update a little bit about another project.
So I'm going to interrupt for just one moment because I don't think we actually captured your point there. So what would that look like up here in terms? I heard a little bit about thinking about cultural development
partnerships. Within the partnerships, let's just say including our sister cities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
We could just, that'll make it simple and people can go where they want with it. It would both go down a rabbit hole.
And the other thing I want to say, just to remind you all, is that this is meant to be consensus. So when I don't hear an objection that says, I don't love that, I'm assuming that you're like, oh, that is a great idea. I'm not going to ask you to vote on these individually, but just know that if there's a disagreement, that one person putting it up here at the end, the assumption is that you're all kind of consenting as you go. May not be your favorite idea, but you're like, I can live with it. So I'm looking for like head nods that I can live with it or I support it. And if you don't, I would love you to speak up. So that's sort of how the assumption I'm making. Okay, great. And yes, you wanted to add something.
Yes, this is a great idea. And also, we have working on a team project, Chinese Pavilion, for already more than 10 years, so tired. And recently, the city finally raised enough money. And hopefully this year when groundbreaking, that is hopefully, still have a lot of.
This is a pavilion, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, in the Depot Park, yeah.
Okay.
That is the previous city council and approved, and also in the year of the 2020 got a construction permit already. But during the pandemic, we waste a lot of the time.
Okay.
It's difficult to raise the money. It will be as a gift to the city. So the city and later will closely work with the sister city nonprofit.
Okay.
And see how we can, move forward. It's really need a lot of the help. It's group of just only several of people. It's big projects.
Okay.
Okay. Keep your ears open. His list is getting longer and longer. Is also looking at Olive Depot Park.
What's
looking at all of Depot Park, because when we are thinking, when I think about development plaza maintenance plan, or we look at work around the plaza, all of the work, I want that to extend to the whole Depot Park area too. We have a building there that's not being used. There's a lot of potential there that could be happening. How do we that maybe we're changing a little bit of the plaza. It's the maintenance and kind of. I don't know I don't want to put it there if that's separate, but.
No, I think it should be a separate, there's been a lot of talk about projects on the depot, which I think is great. And it's kind of already in the works and we just need to continue to push it forward. But I think it's kind of too separate, but I fully support the idea of continuing to enhance, develop, protect, whatever you want to call it, as far as part of our ongoing green space.
Yeah, under economic development, we have.
Just to clarify, is that a separate? Are you moving on to a separate point, or you agree you're adding on to that one?
Well, I'm adding on. Under economic development, we have initiate steps for a comprehensive plaza corridor master plan, which my understanding is includes Depot Park.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
And then I would like to go down I'm sorry, I'd like to go back down to the new one. I'd like to just change the wording on that and just say, consider moving forward on the Ting project.
Okay. Okay. So consider. So it sounds like it's not, none of these are slam dunk. So it sounds like we want to. We need
something needs to be revisited. Although it was approved several councilmen ago, dynamics have changed, times have changed, and I by no means am I not supporting it. I'm just saying that I like that wording better.
Okay, so I'm hearing we need to do a little more thinking on this one to flesh out what that really is before we know how to move forward on it. Is that what I'm hearing?
That would be my comment.
Okay. Okay, so we consider moving forward on that?
Consistent.
Yes. So sorry, I'm looking for, there was a tweak there. I'm looking for I'm still looking for head nods that folks are like, okay, that works for me. Okay, great. Yes.
So on the green links, I'd like to include in that to have better walking paths on the existing roads. Because to me, is before we start, green linking around town, there's a, one gentleman who wrote to us that he's having to walk in the mud every time he gets off the bus. So, my usual rant, which is West Napa Street, benches and trees. It's so hot that in the summer you can't walk on that side of the road. So I would like to include in that green links, establishment of green links through town and just enhancing walkability. And also at night, we heard from Aaron talking about the lighting at night and so forth. I just think that in the existing places where people do walk, we should make it as safe and as comfortable as possible. It's pedestrian safety, but it's also, maybe.
That's existing.
It's kind of existing, yeah. But but it's also like it's like part of the green links thing. It's like, before we go there, can we at least make sure we can walk down Napa Street?
Okay. Is there something we need to change here? Or does this capture it, or is there different language we want?
And I think that was the intent, is let's focus on the existing, and then tree canopy benches, and then green leaves.
Okay, great. Yes. And I'm gonna, and then we're gonna move on from this one.
Need to go back to the team, consider moving forward. If this is a goal, I considered this when we talked about it. It's not really an action. How about talk about this as a council eventually? So maybe the thing is, it's to bring the team project back to the council.
So to me, that's what this would be, which is to say this becomes a staff item to bring it back with a recommendation that says we decide to put it on hold because we don't have money. We decide we're just going to put it on the shelf. We decide to move forward. We decide we're going to do phase 1. Here's the timetable, whatever that is. But that this becomes a staff item to make a decision at some point. Okay, so.
Good call.
Great. Okay, good. So if folks are okay, for the sake of time, I'm going to move us forward. Again, we can always come back. Yes.
Title, on the title, would it be appropriate to add parks, recreation, arts, and community services? I'm just trying to elevate. Arts program is a bullet down there, and it really, from what we're hearing, and we're talking about a 1% budget and public art, that I think it deserves to be part of the title.
Thank you. I'm seeing some head nods on that. Okay, with that, I'm going to pause on this one. You've been elevated to a title. Congratulations. Okay. All right. So with that, I'm going to recommend we move forward for the sake of time. And again, we can always come back. So we'll show you these at the end and you can decide love it or something's missing. Okay. So economic development, financial. So we're on 3 of 5. So just in terms of where we are. What's here? Again, anything you want to eliminate or change before we start adding? Yes, I'm seeing motion.
Ways to support local businesses. I think bicycle parking, we've been talking about that a lot, but that's an element that can support local businesses and whether to add it in there specifically, or is that part of the bigger plan? Also, want to say this out loud. I have been approached about parklets, and that still seems to be something that's of interest for some of the businesses. Is that something that we want to look at again?
Okay, so there's a question about whether we explore better placement of bike racks and or parklets.
I might suggest we look at that the same way we're going to look at the Ting, bring it back for a discussion point to the council before we put it on as a goal.
And I'll just say honestly that is essentially what happens with all of our goals, because as staff brings it back, they bring it with a recommendation that says, here's the thing. And sometimes it doesn't come forward because they can't recommend it because we don't have the money. So that's often why some of these things sit here, because not that we don't love it and we can't figure it out, we just don't have the funds. But that all of these generally will come back to you as a council agenda item for you to decide, do I love it? And do I love it in this way and on this timing? And then can we afford it? Good reminder. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Just one last thing. Along these same lines, and it's really kind of the perfect way to collectively support local businesses, but we've talked about possibly closing some of the streets at a particular time to create more pedestrian-friendly environment.
Okay, so we're hearing more about making it more walkable, not just walkable because I'm getting my exercise, but walkable specifically in the support of I'm heading down to my local business to do the thing I would do there. Okay. What else is coming up for you in terms of things you want to eliminate or change?
I think we can strategically implement new sales tax measure. Thank you, Councilwoman Lowe. That we achieved that.
Nicely done. That's not trivial.
I'm looking for those achievements. So one of the things that is under economic development. I think one of the things that we're going to have to really stay on top of is the changing landscape of the wine industry and the effect that that's going to have on land use and development. Also, so that's one of the things I think we want to stay ahead of the game on. There's some work beginning on this now, not much, but Sonoma Ecology Center is doing some work on that. Davis is doing some work on that. But the other thing is there's also between, I hope I don't sound like a broken record, but I did go to Mexico. And I do love Mexico. But there's Mexico and our region, so the region of Michoacan and Jalisco, are exhibiting some of the same climate issues. They grow berries, we grow wine. Some people here are transitioning to berries. Some people in Mexico are transitioning to wine. Having some kind of economic exchange, and this would be, Sonoma would be part of, but we could support a regional exchange of economic development. I think also it helps support some of the work that needs to be done in bringing immigrant populations here to work the land. There's some of that work already going on, but would help reinforce that and help support that. But it's not specific to our city, except in the region, it is so important to us, the wine industry, and what's happening, how our agricultural lands are going to be used. So I think that it's a time we really need to be very, very innovative in thinking about what's going to happen. How do we do this? How do we look at other people? How are we doing that regionally? And I think especially with some of our partners that we could develop in regions in Mexico. So there. I don't know what you would think. You don't have to add the Mexico part, but I think that being part of regional discussions about the changing land use, upcoming changing land use issues that are going to be affecting us economically, and how we can get ahead of that to turn those into economic opportunities before they become economic, risks.
Thank you for that.
I had.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
Oh. Revenue and the budget management, because right now there are a lot of the uncertainties. So if possible, when we prepare the budget, and in the long term, we could increase the reserve fund if we have additional money. Because right now, I think it is 17%. Right now we are on 17%. If the possible, we increase in certain amount and prepare for bad weather.
So there's a question about when we have extra reserves that we sock those away essentially for rainy days or climate disasters or other things we might be struggling in terms of risk management. For example, increased reserves might be a way to do that. Other thoughts on that?
I think what we're talking about really is looking at the criteria. I think this is what you mentioned. We look at the criteria we currently have for our reserves and see if we need to adjust them. Because we actually have our reserves are beyond what we're required to have, but we want to look at do we want to change that criteria so that we have more in reserves? And then also one of the things is look at how do we look at when there are, because we're recognizing there could be a lot of things that could happen. We want to make sure that we have criteria ready for how we're going to make the decisions about when we go to those reserve funds, what's the prioritization of reserve funds. So it's policies around our reserve fund, I think is what we're looking for.
This all goes under finding ways to diversify the financials, the economic development, financial stability, which I think is really critical. We heard it a lot from the commenters earlier. We should include that efforts to find leases for the vacant Rite Aid building, for example. It's a huge piece of property that in the city, and any other vacant facilities, try to, whatever way we can, make it easier for people to move in or put something in there that, and I also heard from Mark and from Tim that, and I don't know if this goes in this particular section or I had it written in the next one, to help accommodate transportation for workers, although we're of course going to try to have housing here. We know that families, one may work in St. Helena and one works in Sonoma, and so they live in Napa, and how do they get here? That to look at transportation for workers. And I don't know if that goes into the regional thing, which is the next one, or this one, but it does have, there's parts of each one. So I just want to bring that up because I think that's critical. But there were times here, and there still are, where there's signs on the door, "We're closed today because no one could work." We've all seen that. So.
Okay, so maybe I think we're sort of maybe we put it in the next one. If it doesn't fit, we'll think about bringing it back here. Okay, great.
In the sake of time, anything else on this one?
Yeah, Dr. House.
Yes.
Various comments. I think we need to continue to be creative and try to figure out how to incentivize businesses, how to incentivize business to fill empty spaces. And I think that's incredibly important. And oops, sorry. And it's now on. And then the last one, just on the initiate steps to the Comprehensive Plaza Corridor Master Plan. I love seeing it still on there. My commentary is just it's a long, large, expensive project. The longer we take to initiate it, the longer we're ever going to realize any phase of it. So I would love to see that prioritized.
Yes.
Okay, I'll be quick. So one thing, on the recreation that we didn't include is more activities for youth in the city places to go to. Anyway, just that would be good to have that as one of our priorities is youth activities, especially in the evening. There's not a lot of things for kids to do. So that the reason I thought about that, because in that also I support Tim's request in regards to having an evening loop of the bus for people that goes later in the evening. It also can be used for more people coming into the plaza and young people that have no way. And that's certainly just within the city and doesn't go to the valley yet, but that could be a start for that. And then the other thing is, I think, in looking at identify ways to diversify our business sector, we are, in a sense, creating a cultural center for people to come and visit. And so I think we should be looking at the creative economy and how we support the creative economy. I am actually on the investment committee for a foundation or a nonprofit that's what they do, is build support for creative economies. And that may be something also that we could be looking at. How do we go into looking at what does that mean? And it's, how do we drive more creatives here as an economic driver? So.
Okay. With that, I'm going to recommend we pause. Maybe that's part of diversifying the business sector. And again, we can continue to wordsmith this and when staff takes this back, but we want to make sure that we're getting head nods and we've got the general idea here. So we're finishing up our third. If you're good, we're going to move on to the next one. Okay, so this one, we said this one maybe could evolve, and maybe it's not just about annexation unification. We talked about this having a regional focus in terms of thinking about disaster preparedness, thinking about risk mitigation. We're a small town, we can't live like an island. We talked about transportation opportunities that might go here. So we can either start with the guts and then rename it, or we can say, what is this category really? And then we could talk about what should be in it. Anyone have thoughts? I'm going to put you on the spot. Go for it.
If we put what we think should be in it here, it might help us define the title.
Yes, agreed.
And I will start. I'm going to throw this one out there. It's kind of the elephant in the room, but I believe that we should look at reconsidering our uniform growth boundary.
Okay.
So,
what an elephant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we should think about reconsidering it. Okay. Other thoughts?
I think we also need, because one of the things I think we're moving away from, and I could be wrong, there's not a lot of work being done on the annexation issue. The work is on the unification and services. I think we should maybe still keep it there. I mean, the EIFD is kind of another way to approach that. It doesn't seem like there's a support from the county side for annexation. But I would say that then maybe, because one of the things, there's a lot of things we're talking about to broaden how we work together. How do we ensure, one of the issues would be so that people that live in the valley have more of a voice in the decisions that are made in the city, because they do affect people in the valley. And maybe encouraging, more opportunities for forums for city, around city and valley discussions, connection, inclusion.
Is that a change on this one?
Yeah, because I don't think I don't see that I think we've done it around specific topics, but have we brought the public in? I know we do that at Sonoma Valley CAC. That's just around land use. This could be about, how are we doing and maybe not creating another commission. We have plenty of them. I don't know, some form, but continuing to identify ways. I think we just need to think of how we're implementing that. So it becomes a real thing, because I think many of these other things we're working on.
Okay, so I'm hearing that we've got the words, maybe these are the words, but the question is like, what really is this, and what more can we do to actually do that?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
So I would say that I think it happens. I don't know. We had people here today that weren't necessarily from the city.
Yep.
The general plan meetings. I know we have people that are in the unincorporated area that get that word. So maybe it's this intention here that we have is that when we do those type of meetings, we're intentional about making sure that we are bringing broadcasting that wide, which we feel like we are to those types of meetings. I mean, I think in addition to including on the boards and commissions and that we already do.
Okay. Anything else here in terms of eliminate, change, and we can open it up to anything you want to add here.
I do have a question, and I could be wrong. Has not the county produced that disaster preparedness report? And we have it, or I mean, it's available. And is it comprehensive, or is it something, as you see, that there's a value in continuing the study of it, or whatever?
That was a hazard mitigation report that was done in conjunction with all the cities in the county. This is just disaster preparedness, which we meet weekly on identifying.
Right, and I believe in the meeting that I attended yesterday that the Jeff, who's the county emergency?
Jeff
Duvall.
Yeah.
I thought he mentioned he's completed a report and it's about to be circulated.
I don't know which one he's might be talking about. There's a lot of them coming out. But I think this one is ongoing. This one definitely is not it's not a specific.
That's what I just needed to get confirmed that it's ongoing. That's fine. Thank you.
This is something we have to continue to work with the county on and involve in.
Okay. Other thoughts on what this category could be? And now might be a good time as you look at it to think about what are we really calling this in terms of like what is our city priority as we think about having a regional lens to our work.
Can I just add something? That there's a real concern about the current immigration and anti-immigration efforts that's in the Valley. And I think we need to put it on there because there's concerns from businesses, several of them, if you're looking at social media today, several of our businesses are noting it and dedicating a portion, if not all of their proceeds today to immigrant services. They're noticing it in their workers, in the families, and we don't know how it's going to impact when we start coming into harvest and so forth. So I don't think we can ignore it. It is a regional concern, and it could be, a regional real big problem. So I think it could be part of our preparedness, but I think that we have a lot of immigrant workers in Sonoma Valley, and they're concerned, and we need to reflect that.
Might I suggest that we maybe frame that by simply say immigration support, because what I think is valuable is beyond the most recent or the current concern about what's happening, that hopefully that's going to die and go away, and but the need and the want to continue to support the immigrant population, I think, is a valid yes.
So, I mean, 2 points of information that are good. Sonoma County is seen as the model for emergency immigration support. So, but we haven't had, the issue has been not showed up here a lot yet. One of the things, that Rebecca Ermercio, our supervisor, brought up last night was someone being taken from one of the county offices, and education for the county staff. I think it'd be good for the city staff to be educated. We've been looking at that for a while. I think it's time for us to actually do that. The other thing is, I think that we really want to be, I would like to see that specifically on here. We did give support last year to the overall coordination of emergency services around this. We did a small amount, but I think that it opens it up for us to be able to do more support. I think naming it is gonna, because I know the other piece of information is important for us to know. When I talked with Leonardo Lovato last night, there's families that we know that are doing this too. Many families are deciding to leave. And those families that are deciding to leave work in our wine industry and our restaurant industry and our economic drivers of this community. So I think, and that's, I guess, where I like this kind of building regional support between countries. Anyway, I just think that there's a way that we can be supporting, working, certainly with the county. But 20% of the population, 19, or I think it's actually around 19, but say 20, in the city of Sonoma are Latino. And so it's not just our immigrant population, it's actually immigrant and Latino, because many Latino folks, their family members may be immigrants. And so the whole family moves, not just the immigrant member of the family. So
make sure that we're clear that, obviously the predominant immigrant population is Latino in this area, but it's also Asian is the second most popular, most prominent, and there is some efforts that are being done, obviously, against Asian populations as well. And I just think, again, we should name it, we should put it up there, and we should be mindful of it and take care of our residents however they came here.
And certainly our Nepalese population potentially lost their protective status.
Yeah.
So I want to think about how we capture this.
No, first.
Yes.
I was going to suggest that we use the reference immigrant support.
Yeah.
And then we drop annexation off the title.
Just to know about regional.
Okay, so two things. So one of our details here would be about immigrant support.
So one recommendation I could have is coordinate with the county. I think this one probably needs to be revised. But just coordinate with the county on valley-wide issues, including immigration support. Because I think that's what I'm hearing is that we want to work closely with the county, especially in the valley, on these issues. So that could call it out, like you said, be explicit about the immigration issues, and then we can rename the title as well regionally.
Okay. All right, we'll capture those words. If you don't love them, we can change them. But let's start with that. So one is we want to make sure we capture immigration support here. And we noted, obviously, the county's doing a lot. So coordination there would make sense. And then there's a question about annexation, whether that belongs in the title or belongs anywhere. So there's a thought that we eliminate annexation from the title. Will that give everyone heartburn at all? Or is any thoughts on that?
The only other possibility would be just say regional unification and annexation, because in reality, we're talking about annexing some corners of our current city in the sphere of influence, etc. So it's not that the annexation concept is just to the valley. In reality, we're going to have to be annexing portions of Napa Road at Fifth Street East if we pursue that. There's the potential there, maybe somewhere along Leveroni Road. So I think the idea of regional partnerships, unification. I love the idea of unification. I love the idea of just regional annexation, because that is kind of a broad term that I at least could get behind.
Okay, so there's a thought about regional partnerships and unification. Does annexation fit under unification, or we want to call that annexation on its own? There was a thought that we don't need annexation. That sounds like there is maybe some annexation happening. Is that a bullet point, or is it in the title, is my question?
Put it in the title, unification, annexation, and immigration, because I really do like that immigration goes up to the title. I think because it is so potentially when we get to climate, I can expand there, but one of, a real risk that is a real risk to us and our economic viability. So, and it's something we have to do regionally. It's not something we're going to do as a city alone. So I like that.
Okay.
I would suggest, to keep unification and, delete annexation, because annexation is too vague of the word.
Too vague?
Yeah.
Sorry, you said it's too big or too vague?
Too big.
It's too big of a word. Okay. So my question was, is annexation, does it fall as a bullet point under unification as something you could do? I'm just questioning, or is it still front and center at the top? Your call.
I would like to, I don't think it hurts to have it up there. I agree with Ron that, potentially these could be very small annexations, but they're still significant, and they're still going to raise the hackles of the people that are going to be annexed or not. There's still a road there's several little spots like right in the middle of the city. Harrington Drive. There's lots of places that are potential there. So who knows? Okay, people in Harrington, don't be mad at me. I'm just naming it.
Okay, so I'm hearing thoughts that this is the words we're landing on. Any thoughts?
I have no one thought.
Okay, all right, we're good with that. I don't love it, but I can live with it. Okay? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that was what I heard. Okay. So we may pause here and perhaps move on to our last one. Again, knowing we're going to come back to all these at the end.
Here we go.
Okay. Okay, great. We're going to move on. We have one more. Okay, so climate mitigation and adaptation. So anything?
Oh, it's such a good example of how well we work together.
Nice. Nicely done. Thank you for calling that out. I love that. And anything on here we can eliminate or change. Yes, and that is our goal. I don't have to be like jumping up and down, but I can live with it. That's what we're going for. Yes.
Well, we can eliminate the second from the bottom, I think.
Yes. Yeah, we can celebrate the elimination.
Yes, we can celebrate that. Nicely done. Staffing is how this work gets done. So that's amazing. Okay.
Clarity on now the second from the bottom. I've been glad to believe that within our city limits, we have those vulnerable populations. And not to say that I'm not concerned, but to me, it kind of kicks back up to some of the support. We're giving regional support in that previous goal, and that we're not turning a blind eye, that we want to get involved. But I thought I was told that we have no vulnerable populations within our 10,730 people.
That's not true.
Is that not true?
Okay, when I think of vulnerable populations, certainly I think that we have low-income people in the community. We have seniors in our community in the city of Sonoma. We certainly have LGBTQ plus folks. We have, so we have vulnerable populations. So I think it's that broader sense of vulnerable populations. And then, so as you're doing climate work, you're prioritizing. So, seniors are more affected by heat than young people are affected by
I
heat.
think I was going back to earlier conversations about when we were looking at economic feasibility, whatever that is, the EIFD, that we technically didn't have. So, but I agree with you as far as the broader session, and you've provided clarity. I support it.
And Jennifer, just remind me, it's the disadvantaged communities that are defined by the city, which drives grants, which we're not eligible for. So that's different than this.
Okay. Vulnerable versus.
And the reason we don't qualify is how they do the data, because they do the data by census and not by block. If they did it by block in Sonoma, we would have ducks, disadvantaged communities. Quack.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. Okay, so other thoughts in terms of climate mitigation and adaptation? Anything that we want to eliminate or change here? Yes.
We had a long discussion of this, and I was partially out of the picture, but I just want to make sure that I don't know where this goes, but I think we need some clarity on the warming centers and cooling centers, just more specifics in terms of when we can anticipate them. It was a great presentation, but there were a lot of questions, and so I'd like to continue to work on that. Develop a policy that is more, we can anticipate better.
Is that under vulnerable populations potentially as an option? I'm asking as well. Yeah. And we also don't have to solve it today either if staff figures out where it goes maybe later, but.
It's confusing, just a few.
Yeah, just a little, I felt like we need a better clarity as to, so that not so much we need to anticipate it to staff it, but people need to anticipate, is it going to be open? That kind of thing. So I just like to bring it and see if we can fine tune our policy on that. I think it's part of this, right? This, could be
sanitation for sure.
It's part of it.
So we just put including warming centers.
Yeah, including warming and cooling centers, I think.
There.
Okay. Yes.
I just have a question really for the other council folks. We don't talk about water here at all, other than flood. But it seems to me that forward thinking would say we should be talking about water still today. Yeah.
I think we can add it to continue to prioritize fire and flood resiliency. I was going to add in there and groundwater. We could just do water.
Water supply and quality.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think where we're having the biggest issue is, my understanding, is in the groundwater area.
I would agree, but I think it's also prudent because we get 85% of our water from Lake Sonoma or the Russian River. That's still vulnerable. We have a dam supposedly going down or whatnot. So we want to keep focus on what I think is that broader issue of quality of water supply, quality of water. And you're right, the depletion, the subsidence that may be happening, certainly in other parts of the state, is critical. So I think that's good.
Yeah, we heavily relying on Russian River water if possible, and we can diversify our water resource. Also, this is a long-term research project, and some of the possibilities, yeah, maybe we can. And regarding the water and also the waste and the management also is important.
Okay.
Yeah, please add it.
So so both our source of clean water as well as how we process our drinking or wastewater.
It's not a wastewater. Waste, the garbage treatment. Zero waste.
Okay. Okay.
So one other area that I just want to have a brief discussion that may or may not justify any additional words, but the continuing prioritizing fire hardening. We all know, and it was mentioned, that we have now these new CAL FIRE hazard maps that are driving me absolutely unequivocally crazy. And I would love to have some sort of agreement of continuing to work with our local agencies to continue to harden our community. I'll say within reason, but I know that's a subjective word. But I know that there are still discussions. It's still in Sacramento debating on how these are going to be implemented. We fortunately have like 3 different zones within our city. Some of them are very impactful. Some of them doesn't have any impact on it. But I'd like to keep the dialogue and the communication open with fire chief, fire marshal, and anybody that will listen.
So this speaks to how we implement the new fire maps.
Or not. Yes.
Okay.
We plan on having a community meeting on fire hardening coming up. So do we want to put that as a?
It doesn't. No. You can just put that down in something else that's for you. I just think we need to continue to partner with the Sonoma
Fire. Okay.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, there's some work being done to work with private landowners in regards to helping them do restorations on their lands in regards to fire hardening. So a lot of it is the peripheral anyway. So the one I would like to address this in looking at our tree inventory, addressing the native plant issue, and whether or not that we only have native plants on our tree inventory, but we designate on our tree inventory which trees are native plants, and encourage people to be able to know where to get native plants, because the bees and insects are important to us. But
I would love to use the word encourage, but I would not support the idea of mandating.
Yeah, and encourage was the word I was thinking of. The other thing is, I think it's just why I think going forward, we're going to be focusing more on we've got to continue to mitigate, but adaptation. I mean, all of the information that's coming out. I was just in a meeting with Bill McKibben, who did 350.org, that follows all of the climate issues. And we're really not going to meet the, climate goals that people want to meet to avoid some of the weather disasters that we're going to be facing. It's not possible anymore. We're going to be able to maybe potentially stay where we are. There still will be increased weather events, but I think we have to be in that mind frame that we're constantly need to be in this state of, we still haven't seen what the wet weather is going to be like, but we have gone beyond the ability to change global warming. We're we're not going to be able to bring that, not in any of our lifetimes. So we have to start really thinking about adaptation, not to be, and one of the things I really try to do, I would like us to be more connected with our plan, our commissions, our climate commissions. Now that we have someone that's dedicated, I think that we can have them working with the climate commission of like, what are the key priorities that we want to achieve so that we can start tracking them in a way that is, you know, realistic of what we can achieve and what is being done. So I would like to see, because I think what I learned, what's really important, I've learned over the years, is, and I just did it. When you talk about the externalities, people shut down because nobody wants to know that we're in the midst of a climate disaster, right? So we have to celebrate what we're doing well. So we have to have that eye towards adaptation. At the same time, what encourages people to do more is when you show them that we've done something well and celebrate that, you know. So continue to talk about what we're doing well, but really understand kind of the position we're in and start tracking that better. Because I agree, I didn't take the time to look at, did all of we report out, did it really match with all of our, you know, because that piece of work from the commission is very long. And so, you know, help us kind of prioritize so that they have, like, these are the things we really want to see come through this year. So I think coordination, you know, better coordination with our climate commission so that we're really, you know, setting realistic, you know, and stretch goals, but for what can be done.
One word that I think has always been applicable and something that's driven me for the last 50 years is the word steward. It'd be nice to be better stewards. And I don't know if that's too vague or whatever, but that certainly brings a consciousness to my mind when I think of the word steward. And that can be interpreted a little bit differently, but again, I think our earthly responsibilities are to be good stewards.
Thank you. Anything else here that you want to change or add? Okay. So with that, if you're good, I'm going to invite us to go back to the first page. Just give it a once over. Not going to be final. We're not going to keep wordsmithing here. Where we're headed with this is that. Do you want me to hand that over to you in terms of where we're headed? Okay. So what staff will do with this?
We'll be taking this back. We will try to wordsmith this a little bit based on what we heard. I think everybody back there has heard you as well. We'll try to make sense of it and then bring it back to you and report out any changes we make to the language that's up here. But if you're okay or you give us direction to move forward with this, you'll see some version of this come back to you.
Okay. And timing early March, roughly mid-March, something like that maybe?
I think early March. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So we're just going to go through these. We'll just pause. I'll be quiet. We'll just go through them one at a time. Just raise a flag if you're like, oh, I can't really live with that. But I'll pause and let you read through what we have here. Give me a thumbs up if you're like, I can live with that. And then I'll know we can flip the page. All right. I've got 2.
Yes. One comment to share with my fellow councilwoman. The word that I think workforce is something that's akin to the affordable housing. What I think the expression that we've heard so oftentimes is the nut that we can't crack is what is called the missing middle. And so I'm fine with keeping workforce there.
Okay. So I have 2.
Yeah. This one's in, yeah.
Okay, you can live with this. All right, you can live with it? Okay, good. Next. Thank you, sir. Parks, Recreation, Arts, and Community Services. Love it. I can live with it. Okay.
This one, maybe that is a technical task. Bring the team project to a council for action and decision. That project was approved, rapidly. And the contact with the city, with the city administrative staff, it's just updated codings and any construction code with the state and update it. Because and the fundraising, event just purely based on the city decision. If without the city decision, no this project at all. So that is
I hear what you're saying. I agree with you. I just think that there so much time has gone by. If for no other reason, let's tell the public. It can be a celebration of the fact that you've raised the money. This has been approved, but I don't think people know about it because so much time has gone. And you could find out there more people want to give money to it, or more people want to help it, or I think it could only get better by bringing it forward. So I don't think it'll hurt. You're right. It's past. We're not going to undo it, but let's share it. Let's see how it goes forward.
Okay, so this line item, staff is going to bring it back with an update and a recommendation on what needs to happen moving forward. It could just be a discussion item or an informational item if there's not action to be taken, but that will be up to the council to decide. But it sounds like at some point this should come back to council in some way is the hope, so that you all can then decide if we need to do a change of course or what needs to happen, if anything. If not, it becomes an information item. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. So my only one quick thought is, I think since we're doing the plaza, looking at the plaza, which my understanding extends to Depot Park, a whole master plan.
No, the current master plan is just the plaza, but the large project goes from the overlook
Right.
all the way through.
So
it would include the plaza, but I'm hoping that the kind of work we're going to be doing on the plaza is not hinged upon this bigger, much longer term plan.
Got it. But the longer term, so my sense is, I think it's hard when we compartmentalize and we have all of these different little projects and need to look at everything in the full context of what's possible to happen. So that's the only thing I would want to see around this, is how this fits into overall planning that we're thinking of doing, which includes, to me, a lot that could be happening in the Depot Park area, that we want to have that planning first before, so it's a part, it's part of that overall project versus a project of its own. How it fits in.
As I understand it, that in essence, there was an old gazebo in Depot Park that fell apart and people were sleeping there and became an eyesore. And I think the original proposal, which made sense, was just simply this proposed structure was going to just go where the existing gazebo was. And I think that it would, because we're talking about a project, this larger, I call it the 2035 vision project, that I would not necessarily want to delay the Ting project, if that's the support of the council, till once we get that project going. I don't see how that would become an impediment from a design standpoint, or that all of a sudden these changes are, we're going to have to, the tail is going to wag the dog, so to speak, on the design. So in this particular case, I think it made sense what they had proposed and approved. The reality is that what was permitted was a structure that was totally based upon drawings that were done by a local architect. And since then, the project has continued, and we're getting into the weeds, and I see that hand, but anyway, keep what we got.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is it's not as straightforward. We have this project, it's moving forward. It sounds like it's and I don't know your city as well as I wish I did, but it sounds like it's geographically in an area where there's other things happening. It sounds like staff needs to noodle this over and think about the best way to bring this back to council in what form. But it sounds like there's an opportunity for staff to bring this back to you so that you can just say, we love it, let's keep going, or we need to think about it in a broader context, or whatever this current council thinks needs to happen next.
I would just like to wait to hear from the recreation director and city manager on the best way to proceed.
Great. So we're going to put this over to staff on how to proceed on this topic, and whether it's a standalone topic or if it's related to other topics. And we'll have staff work that out and come back to you all with the proposal. Great. Okay. So next one. love it, can live with it, not there yet. I hear you. Great. Next. Sonoma Valley Regional Partnerships, Unification, Immigration, and Annexations. Can live with it, love it, not there yet. Good enough. I can live with it. Okay, great. Next. Climate mitigation and adaptation. Can live with it, love it. Okay, great. All right, we're there. We are there. I'm going to propose a yes. Oh, not yet. Not yet. Yes. Speak now. Final words.
So, I mean, I hope for the number one catches that I do that you're working with us to make sure that we track what they are, what they're proposing happens and what we're doing, and so that we can see why something isn't there, so that we're more reflective of what their goals are. And I think that that's in the first one. Yeah.
Okay. All right. It looks like we got it across the finish line. Okay. So where we're headed next is next for this body of work. Staff has been copiously taking notes in the areas that this impacts and there's so much that happens in a small city that becomes cross-functional. So they've all been paying attention, heard your input, have talked to you about these before. We captured the notes here, and we'll take this then back, and it'll come back to you in the early March timeframe in a cleaned up form that like it did last time, so that this can live on for the next year to guide the work that staff's going to do to bring this to life. With that, we're going to move into transitioning. I would recommend, if you all are amenable, it's been a minute since we've been in these seats, we take a 5-minute bio break, do a last refill, and we'll come back and wrap up. And my goal is to get you out of here before 5.